Good evening, everyone. This is the Goffstown Planning Board. Today is Thursday, April 23rd. We are having our regularly scheduled meeting here today at Goffstown Town Hall. We also have members and applicants attending by telephone pursuant to Emergency Order Number 12 and Executive Order 2020-04. We're using emergency provisions to conduct meetings through electronic means while preserving to the extent feasible the public's right to notice of the meetings and to listen and observe. I have an announcement that I need to read. We are physically at Town Hall, but you can join us on GTV or call in. Public access to the meeting is a telephone conference line, and you can dial 603-766-5646, and the participant code, which you would enter after reaching that, is 785645, followed by the pound sign. If you get online, those notices are also online for that number. We've given previous notice in regards to that. And if anybody has a problem with accessing it, we'd like you to call a different number. That number would be 384-3624. In the event that we find out that the public is unable to somehow access this meeting, we will be adjourning the meeting at that point in time and scheduling another meeting to address the matters that are on our agenda tonight. All votes are taken by roll call when we are using telephonic meeting provisions, and we are going to start the meeting by taking a roll call. And with that, I'm going to ask for the people in attendance to say, I'm going to call them, and then I'm going to call who I think is online. David?
David Pierce, an alternate member for the board.
Gail?
Gail LeBruck, alternate and recording secretary.
Tim?
Tim Redmond.
My name is Barbara Griffin. Online, I believe we have Kimberly.
Yes.
Karen, are you there?
Karen will not be attending, Barbara.
Okay.
Philip
Pete?
Devanza.
Phil, thank you. Peter, are you here?
Peter Georgiantis, Selectman's Rep.
Thank you. And Jim Raymond, are you present?
I'm here.
Thank you. All right, so if Karen is not here tonight, that means we are down a regular member. So David, we will have you voting tonight for Karen. Thank you. The first item on our agenda is the minutes of our last meeting. That would be the minutes of April 9th. They were mailed to all members in their packet. Is there a motion or corrections or both on those, please?
This is David. Motion to approve the minutes of April 9th.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any,
I have corrections.
Peter?
I have a correct. Yes, on the second page, the top, not at the first page at the bottom, but it's on the votes to appoint him. It says the final vote was 700. That's not accurate because there were 3 abstentions. So it should have been 403.
Thank you. Got it, Gail?
Yep.
All right, any further corrections? And do I understand that the mover and seconded of that motion accept those corrections?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Roll
Oh, sorry, before you said it, I'm looking around the room going, I don't really care about that. David?
Approved, yes.
Tim?
Yes.
I vote yes. Kimberly?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Phil?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Thank you. The minutes are approved. We have a couple of letters of correspondence, some of which might deal with an application, and we'll deal with those at that time. So I would like to move to the first item of old business. That would be map 16, lot 8. This is a completeness review, conditional use permit review hearing for a proposal to allow for 2 driveways to be located on proposed lot 8-1. A conditional use permit is required for the second driveway, as the lot is required to have 250 feet of frontage per section 742 of the zoning planning ordinance, and the lot will only have 188.22 feet of frontage. The applicant is Daniel Lapointe, and the property owner is Lucille Bork. The property is located at 34 Hague Street. This was continued from the March 26th meeting where a subdivision was approved with conditions, and since then, I understand they have been to the ZBA. I need to also make clear we have members of staff online. Joanne, all right, could you identify yourself, please?
Yes, hi, Joanne Duffy, Planning and Economic Development Director.
And Sarah?
Sarah Wardy, Town Engineer.
Thank you both. I'm sorry I missed you when we went through first, who was online. Have I missed anybody else online as far as planning board members or staff in attendance at this meeting? Speak up if I have. Okay, I'm not seeing anybody. And do I have anybody online for map 16, lot 8?
Dan Lapointe.
Thank you, Dan.
Welcome.
All right, and are you the only person we're expecting for this application here tonight?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you. Joanne, you want to go through where we are on this application, please?
Sure, as you stated, they did receive conditional approval for the 2-lot subdivision, which created a lot which was undersized for a duplex, which is what they had wanting to build. So they did receive approval from the ZBA on April 7th. Now they would like to put a second driveway so that each side of the duplex has their own driveway rather than dealing with a shared driveway. In order for that accomplished, they do need a conditional use permit. You should all have in your packet the criteria that they submitted, the answers to the criteria of what's involved for the conditional use permit. It states on the top, conditional use exhibit, second driveway, 34 Hague Street.
I'm noting that everybody physically in attendance here has it, so I'm assuming that people online have it as it was mailed to everybody.
Staples the plan itself.
Correct. All right.
So,
I think we're looking at page 4, Barbara, on what we received in the mail.
The actual application information begins on page 3, but there is a separate stapled packet in your package
Okay.
where
no,
the
all right.
plan is folded and stapled to.
Yep. No, I have that. I just want to make sure I was looking at the same sheet everybody else was.
Okay. So the conditional use is, my understanding is what they are back before this board for. As you might recall, at the last hearing on this application, they were coming for everything, and they decided to split it up, so we just did the subdivision. They went and got what they needed from the ZBA, and now they're back here just for the conditional use permit. Tim,
Can we ask Joanne if this is complete?
We-
We need to do the completion.
the application is complete and it does not have any regional impact.
I'd like to make a motion, we accept this application is complete and ready for review with no regional impact.
is there a second?
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? If I can find my roll call sheet, I will call for a roll call. David?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes,
I vote yes. Kimberly?
Yes.
Peter?
Yeah.
Phil?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Thank you. The application is accepted. Thank you, Tim, for the motion.
Thank you, folks, for your
Thank you.
time.
All right, Mr. Lapointe, you were here in connection with this application. Do you run through the criteria and then, Joanne, I'm not seeing a public hearing on this. Am I supposed to have one?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought so. Okay.
You just,
All right.
it just needs to go through the conditional use permit questions that he's answered on
Right.
the sheet, and then you would open it up to
yeah.
comments.
Right, okay. And we have physically here in the room at Town Hall, the plan itself is on the board. I'm assuming that's what anybody watching is able to see. This is at the end of Hague Street. The highlighted yellow is where the proposed driveways would be, in regards to the duplex that is being proposed to be built on the lot. Mr. Lapointe, if you want to take us through this and address the CUP criteria, I'm not going to ask you to read it directly from your memo, we have it, but if you can go through generally the requirements, that would be terrific.
Sure, I don't have that document in front of me, but the reason why I'm applying for the conditional use permit is, one is to keep the two families separate, considering, and concerned with their parking and vehicles and shoveling and all of that nature. And as I studied the property, obviously it's at a dead-end street, so there's literally no traffic going by. So I says, well, that's probably a good thing too, because it isn't going to be any more dangerous. And even while thinking at it or about it, even if both clients or tenants, you will, or neighbors were to back out at the same time, they would both be going away from each other as they're backing out from the driveway. So it's pretty safe for what we're intending to use it for, is if not safer than even if you have 200 feet.
Thank you, Mr. Lapointe. I appreciate your presentation, but apparently you weren't aware that what we specifically need to address tonight is a conditional use permit for which our zoning requires specific findings to be made. And I suspect you probably did not write the document that we are going to be relying on. Tim has a question.
Would it be fine if I was to read the questions and provide the answers, and Mr. Lapointe could then render a yes or no to the answer, so they will officially be read into the record?
I think that is how we will have to proceed. Do board members have any questions for Mr. Lapointe on this application before Tim goes through the questions and the criteria for the conditional use permit? I'm not hearing anything, so I'm going to ask Tim to proceed. Mr. Lapointe, you're going to hear Tim Redmond state some conditions that we find and then do a description of how your application meets it, and you're going to let us know whether you agree or disagree.
Thank you.
Okay, the first one is, the use is specifically authorized in the ordinance as a conditional use. The answer is yes. See section 7.4.2 of the Goffstown zoning ordinance, which allows the planning board to approve a conditional use permit for a second driveway with less than 250 feet of frontage. Mr. Lapointe?
Do you agree
Yeah.
that's correct?
He said yes.
Mr. Lapointe, you said yes, thank you. Tim?
Yep.
Number two, if completed as proposed by the applicant, the development in its proposed location will comply with all the requirements of this section and the specific conditions or standards established in this ordinance for the particular use. The answer is yes, assuming the ZBA approves the variance, which it did. The intent of this application is to allow for a second curb cut on the proposed lot, which is less than the required frontage. We believe the proposed driveways will meet all of the other requirements specified in the ordinance. Mr. Lapointe?
Yes.
Thank you. Tim?
Number three, the use will be compatible with the neighborhood and with adjoining or abutting uses in the area in which it is to be located. The answer is two-family dwellings are an allowed use in the R2 district with the required lot area. The current lot size requirement was changed some time ago, and under the old requirements, this lot would have been able to accommodate a duplex without a variance. There are other two-family dwellings in the area with similar driveway configurations. The nearest one is at 26 Hague Street. The second driveway is allowed on lots with less than 250 feet with a conditional use permit. Mr. Lapointe?
Do
This
you,
is correct.
okay, thank you. Tim?
Fourth, the use will not have a substantial adverse impact on vehicular or pedestrian safety. The answer is, as stated above, the two-family dwellings are an allowed use in this district, and a second driveway on lots with less than 250 feet of frontage is allowed with a conditional use permit. This area is fully developed, and adding a duplex with the variance or a second driveway to this oversized lot at the end of the road will not have a negative impact on the existing town streets or pedestrian safety. Mr. Lapointe?
That is correct.
Number 5, the use will not have a substantial adverse impact on the appearance and visual quality of the surrounding neighborhood. In evaluating the visual impact, the planning board may consider architectural and design elements. The answer, the application is for a second driveway on a proposed lot with less than 200 feet of frontage, so there should be no adverse impact on the appearance of the neighborhood. Adding a second driveway to the proposed lot would be allowed if the lot had an extra 62.8 feet of road frontage. We do not believe the second driveway or having extra frontage would change the appearance of the proposal in any way. Mr. Lapointe?
That is correct.
And the last one is, the use will be adequately serviced by necessary public utilities and by community facilities and services of a sufficient capacity to ensure the proper operation of the proposed use. The answer, this area is already serviced by municipal sewer, water, and power. As part of this proposal, the applicant will need to extend both the sewer and water mains. In addition, the applicant will also be replacing existing manhole, as DPW reports it is in poor condition. An approval of this application for a second driveway will not require any public expenditure. Mr. Lapointe?
That is correct.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Mr. Lapointe. Do any other board members or staff have any comments or questions before I open this up for public hearing? I'm not hearing anything, so at this time, Derek, do we have any members of the public online for this application?
I don't know if they're for this, but they can press star 9 if they want to be heard.
So if there's anybody online who'd like to make a comment in regards to this application, please press star 9.
Derek, was that the other way around? 9-star?
It's star 9.
Star 9. Thank you.
I am seeing one. All right. They are unmuted and can identify themselves.
All right, if somebody has pressed star 9, and if you could join us in the meeting by identifying yourself, that would be terrific.
Yeah, I'm actually live at 29 Glenwood Drive.
Hi, could you please
And-
tell us your name?
Valerie Callahan.
Thank you. And you live
And-
where?
29 Glenwood Drive.
Okay.
I got a letter from you guys. I say you guys, Goffstown. My apologies.
Okay. Yeah, that's
Um,
okay.
I have property in Florida and property in Goffstown. So, and I got this and I wanted to be online to find out what's going on. And I noticed that there's been some construction and stuff going on over at the school. And I'm listening.
Oh, this is
This is,
unfortunately,
are
my
you,
apologies.
excuse me, ma'am, I don't mean to be, I'm not trying to cut you off, but this is in regards to a duplex that's off of Mast Road, in Pinardville. Is that the plan that you wanted to speak on?
Now, I just got a letter regarding what was going on at the school.
All right, so we're having a presentation on what's happening with the school, next. So,
So
so-
next meeting, like a half an hour from now? Or?
no, as soon as we finish this application, which I frankly
Okay.
don't expect to take more than 5 minutes, we will begin that application. So if
Thank you, ma'am. I'm sorry, I did not mean to take everybody's time. I
No,
apologize.
this
Thank
is
you.
great. It's a great example for everybody as to how you can get into the meeting. And, you know, please hang on and we'll hear from you with the school presentation. So thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank
right.
you, guys. Thanks.
Thanks. All right, so has anybody else tried to unmute?
No.
So I'm not seeing anybody here present at Town Hall. There's nobody else online, so I'm going to close the public hearing at this point in time. We have before us an application for a conditional use permit. Joanne, do you have any other issues in regards to this application?
No, just what is down on, under suggested conditions,
Correct?
as staff is recommending if this were to be approved.
which are a lot of the standard plan issues in regards to the plan itself and conditions for the approval of the conditional use permit. All right, Tim, your hand is up.
Could we have Sarah speak to the upgraded turnaround for the DPW vehicles that's being provided as part of this application?
I can speak to that. They're just adjusting the easement
Right.
in
Not
order
changing.
to center the easement on the existing turnaround. They will also be adding a sign to just let the residents know that it is for counties only, you can't be parking there. But at this time, there is no plan to pave it unless it is damaged during construction, which DPW will do an inspection.
Okay,
Is it presently paved?
yes. Sarah, is the turnaround presently paved?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So at this time, we have a recommendation from our planning director with conditions for approval of the conditional use permit. If a finding is made that the CUP criteria have been met, is there a motion? Tim?
I'd like to add number 5 to the to the conditional use
And what would-
conditions.
And that would be,
What Sarah just spoke to about the requirement to maintain the existing DPW turnaround in its present condition through the construction process, and should it be damaged, the applicant would be responsible to repair it prior to the issue of any certificate of occupancy.
Mr. Lapointe, do you understand that?
I do, that's fine.
Okay. All right, so that would be a conditional use permit with 5 conditions as set forth in our report. Tim?
So I'll make a motion to approve the requests for the.
Jim?
More?
Is that, do I hear you?
Crazy. Next is school.
I didn't say anything, but we have to make the findings for the CUP before we approve.
Right,
No.
okay.
But we did that.
No, that was all part of our public session, was going through them. We haven't actually voted that he has met the criteria.
So do you need a motion to that?
So I
then?
need a motion
From Jim.
for the CUP criteria having been met, subject to conditions, and just give me the CUP criteria.
I move that we find the conditions on page 4 of the report under the heading CUP criteria, without reading them all in detail.
Is there a second?
1 through 6.
Second.
It's been moved by Jim Raymond, seconded by Tim, that the CUP criteria 1 through 6 as set forth on page 4 of the planning board agenda have been met. Is there any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor or oppose, please answer the roll call. David?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
I vote yes. Kimberly?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Phil?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
All right, can I have a motion to approve the CUP subject to conditions 1 through, how many? 5.
So moved.
It's been
Second.
moved by Tim, seconded by Phil. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I'm going to call for a vote. David?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
I vote yes. Kimberly?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Phil?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. That concludes the issues before the board tonight on map 16, lot 8.
Mr. Lapointe, just missed it.
Mr.
you, everyone.
Lapointe, we are all set.
Thank you so much and stay safe.
All right, you be in touch with planning in the planning department as to what you need to do next, please.
Shall do.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye.
All right, the next item on our agenda is map 5, lot 14-1. that is in regards to the school. This is a governmental review of the Glen Lake School Edition, April 23rd, 2020 Planning Board meeting. As permitted by state statutes, which provides under RSA 674-54, the planning board may review and provide non-binding comments and recommendations for the development of, in this case, what is a proposed modular classroom addition to the existing Glen Lake Kindergarten building. The owners are the town of Goffstown, Goffstown School District, and the property is located at 251 Elm Street, zoned R1 and agricultural. We have previously heard a little bit about this last time. Joanne, do you have anything to tell us before we address this?
Mr. Chair, before you do that,
Oh,
I'd like the same
Find everyone.
Hold on, hold on, Jim, was that you?
Yeah, I want to make the same disclosure I did before the conceptual hearing on the school moderator, but that will not affect my review, and we're just doing comments on this in any event, so I'm not going to recuse myself.
Okay, thank you. Joanne?
Hearing is being held under 674:54 governmental land uses. Applicant, which is the school district, is here before you tonight to see if you have any comments and any concerns, any questions before they move forward with this project. The Conservation Commission did take a look at these plans last night, and they had no comments.
Okay. Is there anybody online from the school in regards to this application?
Hello, this is Scott Rose. This is administrator for SAU 19.
And is
And this is Dan Tatum with Stantec Consulting, representing the Goffstown School District.
all right, before we begin, gentlemen, Tim,
We had a rather lengthy review of this, or at least presentation of this at the last meeting. We don't need to go through all this.
the problem with the presentation at the last meeting was it was not a presentation that anybody other than us could see because nobody had the plan
Okay,
to be done.
Taken.
So
taken.
that's one of the reasons we need, I think, to redo this. And I happen to know we have a member of the public, at least one member of the public, who wants to know what's going on. So, gentlemen, welcome.
Chair and board members, thank you for giving us the time to speak in front of you tonight. I would like to go through, as the chair just noted, from start to finish for the benefit of any abutters or people who have interest in this project who are not at the conceptual hearing back on the 9th. So I will make it quick, but I will go through. And I cannot see the presentation tonight. My system at home won't allow me to stream this. So I'd like if you guys could show the site plan first, which would be sheet
I think
C1.
they've got sheet, can somebody tell me if they can read the bottom right?
C101.
C101.
Yes.
Perfect, great. That's the plan that we'll start with. And what we'll do is the same thing we did back on the 9th, is we'll start.
So
and I'm
you
gonna
know,
refer to the date.
excuse me, so you know, this is apparently the only plan we have.
Okay, I sent in this plan and a plan showing the building elevations, and the building elevations are very straightforward, so I can verbally describe them. That should not cause any issues.
We don't have that, and I don't even know if
Maybe it's on the table.
is it on the table? It's not in our plan set.
Yes, it is.
What
I
plan, what's the
provided-
plan number for the elevations?
There it is. It's on the table. It's on the big sheet on the table.
What's the sheet number for elevations?
1 of 3.
So it's not in the set we had for our packet, it was plans dropped off afterwards, okay.
So the folks at home that are attending the meeting,
I don't think
Right.
you're gonna have it, I think
our
this
planning
is-
board members will not have a sheet.
All right, let's go back to C101.
Okay. So starting at, just in very general concept, you can see the school is the existing building on the right-hand portion of the site plan, and there's a very much smaller building addition that is shown on the left side
Do we have a
of that
plan?
plan, which would be the west, and we'll just say left and right for the ease of following the plan. The addition is approximately 65 by 98. It is a modular addition. However, the school was concerned about aesthetics and how it would look, but they were confined by a certain budget. So what they did was, rather than putting this modular building up on sonotubes with a skirt around it and big ADA compliant ramps, they went above and beyond, and we designed a foundation for them. So this will actually sit on a standard concrete poured in place foundation at grade, so it will appear to be a normally constructed building, and the children and the staff will be able to walk from the existing school, which has a slab finished grade elevation of 304.7, and they will be able to walk directly into the new addition at 304.7 with a flat tiled finish connector building, which is 10 by 16 between the two buildings. So this will be a modular addition, but it will aesthetically be very pleasing compared to other modulars you typically see that are usually set out in a parking lot behind existing schools. So we think that you'll be pleased with the aesthetics of this project. So now let's start at the lower right-hand corner of the school. You can see there is there are manholes and sewer tanks, and we are extending the new building is going to have its own sewer service, which connects to the existing service, and its own 6-inch water main. And both of those utilities run parallel to the front of the existing school, approximately 10 feet apart. And the water main will not only provide domestic water to the new building, it will also provide fire supply for the sprinkler system. So the new building will also be sprinklered, and it will have a fire service system that will be connected with the existing building. The sewer system or septic system design includes a new independent tank for the school addition. And one thing I would like to be clear on is their school is not anticipating increasing the number of staff or students. This is to take an overcrowded school and put the kids and staff appropriately spread out in a better square foot distribution, so the kids aren't crammed in closets and hallways. They actually have adequate space.
Do you happen, just a question, you just talked about a student accommodation. Do you happen to know whether this building has only kindergarten children in it? Scott, do you know?
That would be a question that Scott can answer. I'm not sure what the age groups are of the school.
What are the age groups in the school, Scott?
From 3 to 5 years old. We have a large number of preschool students. These are students that are special needs preschool students, as well as role model preschool students. So it's an integrated program where we have a 1-to-1 ratio of special needs preschool kids as well as role model preschool students.
So how many of the kids in this building are not required to be there? How many are preschool kids kindergarten is what the school was built for, but do you have any idea what the relative numbers are?
So just as a matter of law, the law states that any child over the age of 3 with special needs is provided an education. It's the IDEA. And then the role model portion, that is typically half, I would say about, give or take 45 to 50 students, Madam Chair, are the role model preschool students out of the 235. So about 45 out of the 235 students are role model preschool students.
All right, well, that's a discussion for another day. I'm not sure I understood the preschool numbers, but okay, so it's preschoolers and kindergartens. Thank you. I just wanted that clarification because you were talking about student capacity. Thanks.
And just so you know, the role model students pay tuition to attend the school.
Okay.
Okay, so I was talking about the septic system and the spreading of the kids out. So the existing leach field for the school will not be expanded. the additional tank and septic line that will connect into the existing septic tanks is simply to direct the flow to those tanks, which will go to the same field. I didn't quite mention it earlier, but we have already met with the TRC committee. We got comments from the engineering staff, fire department, building department, sewer department, water, and the fire lanes you can see in the front left corner, and it says no parking fire lane in a radius at the entrance. That is to provide fire apparatus access to the front corner. And then to the rear of the building, you'll see another portion of hatched or dark gray pavement that is also noted as no parking fire lane. So the fire access to the new building has been approved by the fire department. Working our way around the back of the site, you can see a pretty dark line that goes into the rear right corner of the new building with UGE, that underground electric that is proposed to come off of the existing utility pole. That's an Eversource transmission line. After this plan was created, between the time this plan was created and today, we have done more research and met with Eversource, and we show a proposed utility pole on the other side of the street. That is going to go away. They're going to just add a transformer to the existing pole and bring underground all the way to the school. So the school will have its own dedicated, the addition, will have its own dedicated electrical service as well. You'll also see, as we continue to work our way clockwise around the new building, there are going to be 13 new diagonal parking spaces proposed. Because of the limitations that the big slope behind that parking, it pinches us in a little bit, so we can't have a full 2-lane traffic. So this will be one way in and one way out. So one car will have to back out of the spot, drive up, and we provided a pretty big turnaround there for the fire trucks, so they can use that turnaround, back in, and leave. People park back there now. They have to park parallel along that back asphalt area. So this will be an improvement. It's not perfect. It is safe, but we are limited with the area we have because of that power line easement. So we've gone over this with the school. They're aware of the situation, and they're happy with the expanded parking. The parking, or the pavement that's right up against the school, in between those diagonal spaces and the actual school building, is existing asphalt, and that will receive an overlay. So they'll maintain the asphalt that's there. When they pave the binder pavement for the parking spaces, then they'll put one nice clean finish across all that back area, so it will all look like a brand new parking lot, which will be a nice upgrade for the school. Working our way again, we're back to the front of the building now. You'll notice that there's a lot of hatched or darker pavement areas for all the sidewalks. We're going to be chewing across those sidewalks to put in the water and the sewer, bunch of trench patches. We met with the school. We said it'd be a lot nicer to just repave those sidewalks. So that will be removed and repaved. So the building is, like I said, is a modular. It will be set in about, I think it's 9 sections of building and all bolted together on a cast-in-place concrete foundation. The building will be set with a crane. The clearing that has been done, and you can see all the grading on the back side of the building. That's about a 3-to-1 slope that we're showing. And what we did actually during construction is we laid that back a little further to about a 4-to-1. There was a couple scattered pine trees that were going to be saved, which was a bad idea because if you remove a bunch of trees around pine trees, they're very susceptible to wind damage. So we took down the additional trees. So the plan right now shows a little bit of a tree line between the top of that slope and the power lines, and that has been removed. So it will, and what they did is created a nice flat surface on top, and they're loaming and seeding the whole thing. I know the school in the past has maintained that slope really well. When we were out there doing some preliminary studies, the kids went out on little walks in the woods, and we saw students out there, so we wanted to provide them with the same type of as Joanne noted in her introduction, the Concom has seen the application. They had no comments. There are no wetland impacts. The only permit that is required for the project was an NHDES subsurface permit for the connection to the existing septic system. that has been received and is part of the full plan set. What we did, because this is a municipal project and doesn't require the typical submission and recordings and things like that, we talked with both Patty and Joanne at the town, and when the project is completed, the contractor will provide an as-built plan. We will review it, make sure it's spot on, and we will provide a Mylar set, full, all 9 sheets of this plan on Mylar for the town's records for long-term use. And obviously, the school district will maintain as-built plans as well. So that, in a nutshell, I tried to keep it brief. As Tim mentioned, this was heard already once. If there's any questions, we would be glad to field them. And as you know, Scott's on the phone as well to field questions if there are any from abutters or from board members or town staff.
All right, thank you. I see Tim has a hand up.
Does Mr. Tatum want to speak to the elevations as well?
Could you speak to the elevations?
Yes, thank you, Tim. I'm sorry, I forgot that. So I wish the elevation plans, the people in the boardroom do have copies of those. Sorry that they were not able to be put up on the show. But it is a simple shed-style addition where the peak of the roof will be parallel with the existing peak. So the water, if you keep looking at the site plan, the rainwater will shed from to the front of the site and to the back of the site. And around the entire perimeter of the building, there's a stone drip line that has a piping system that will collect all the roof runoff and infiltrate a portion of it, which will help take care of the drainage increase, and the remainder will daylight into the culvert that goes under the road. On the back of the building, there are 7 electrical heating systems and AC systems. So the new building will will be air conditioned and heated, and those are all electrical units. So there will be no underground LP tanks, and those are all independent to each one of the 7 sections of the building when they set them down with the crane. The building will have aluminum siding, and the connection building is going to match that. So even though the existing school is brick and mortar, the cost of that was far above the school's budget. So they're matching the connecting building with this modular. Again, no skirt. It will look pretty snazzy as far as modular buildings go. The windows are standard double hung. There will not be a gutter system. The drip line, like I explained, will go directly into the stone drip edge around the building. Scott, I'm not aware of if a color has been chosen yet. Are you aware of a color of the actual addition?
No, I'm not aware of that right now, Dan.
Okay, so we're not quite to that point yet to pick a color out yet. But Tim, I apologize. The elevation views we have from the building company are pretty scant. We don't have color renderings or anything at this point.
Thank you, Dan.
I have a
Yes, sir.
question. David Pierce.
Dan, this is Dave Pierce. I've been on the grounds of Glen Lake School several times, and it's my recollection that this 65 by 98 addition is probably not visible from any public road due to all of the vegetation surrounding the school. Would that be a correct statement?
That is correct, and the actual work, all of the site work, the tree removal, the addition, it is not visible only from the road. It's not visible to any abutting property or homes that we could see either.
Thank you.
Do any other board members have any questions, staff comments on this before I open the public hearing?
Madam Chair, this is Scott Gross. I just got a text message from our facilities director. The color of the siding is white.
Okay, thank
Good choice.
All right, at this time, I'm going to ask if there's any member of the public that would like to make a comment on these plans, to please call in if you have not done so already. The call-in number, once again, is 766-5646, and your participant code is 785-645, followed by the pound sign. If you are online with us and listening to us, you hit, Derek? Star 9 to unmute and ask questions or make comments about this proposal by the school. Has anybody unmuted? We've got somebody here, I think.
I'm not seeing anyone. If you could ask them again to press star 9.
Again, if anybody is listening and would like to make a comment or have any questions about the plan, if they could hit star 9, that would be great.
Okay, we do have one, and if they could identify themselves.
Thank you. I understand that we do have somebody on the line. If we could identify yourself? If we could.
Hi, this is Nancy Munoz. I live on Upton Lane. My property butts up to the driveway.
Okay.
I'm curious what the time frame is for all this to be complete, because we've had a lot of truck traffic the last 2 weeks over here.
Thank you. Normally, we don't, public hearings, we hear comments and then we get answers, but given the format, I will ask if Dan could address that, or Scott, just address that directly right now.
Yes, ma'am. I was wondering if I was going to be allowed to answer that directly. Thank you. The reason for the truck traffic, ma'am, is to make the footprint for the addition. There was a slope that was right up against the old school, so they had to bring out a lot of material. So a lot of that material has actually, pretty much all the existing material has been removed. A portion of it was brought to another school property to be used in the future for the Mountain View Middle School, the third lane that people have talked about in the past, and the remainder of it has been taken to the pit that's owned by the contractor. Most of that trucking is done. There will be some trucks in and out here and there, but the majority of that work has gone by now. And we anticipate this project to be completed for the fall school year, so the students can use this structure in the building in the fall. We don't see any delays as of yet, although because this is a modular building, it is fabricated in a factory situation, and with the COVID-19 restrictions, we haven't got a delivery date for the building, but the water system is almost already done. The sewer system is starting tomorrow. Like I said, most of the material has been removed. So I would say that the heavy lifting of the construction is already by us.
Thank you. That's great.
Does anybody else, or do you, ma'am, anybody have any other questions?
I do have another question. I'll unmute their line, and if they could identify themselves.
All right, somebody else has called in. If you could join us by identifying yourself and let us know what your question or comment is. Is there anybody else who has hit star 9 to join the meeting and would like to say something in regards to the project that's going on at the Glen Lake School in regards to an addition off the back side?
I just want to, my name, I live on Glenwood Drive.
Hi, can you give us your name again?
Valerie.
What's your whole name, please?
Valerie Callahan.
Thank you. I'm sorry, we just need that for minutes that we're required to do by state law.
No worries, no worries.
Okay.
I'm just kind of wondering, as far as, are we doing this addition to expand the school? Is it going to affect any other schools in Goffstown? I mean, this school I moved in 15 years ago, and then this school was built, and now we're expanding it, and I'm kind of wondering what's happening elsewhere. Or is this not the right meeting for me to ask those
Well,
questions?
I appreciate that you're sort of asking the question. This was a matter that was voted on at town meeting this spring in regards to this construction project that was proposed. I think Scott Groves from the business office of the school is online, and I'm going to let him address it. It's my understanding this is the only plan that's in the works right now, but Scott, why don't you address that as to sort of what the plans are for the upcoming year?
Madam Chair, you're absolutely correct. This is the only plan right now that the school district has for any type of expansion of school facilities. The kindergarten building, which also houses preschool students, has just seen a tremendous amount of growth. I believe well over 40 to 50 students over the last four years. So as Goffstown has become more attractive to many young families, we're seeing a spike in enrollments, especially in our elementary schools. So currently, that the plan is for this modular addition. We also have a building committee that is looking at our enrollments across the district. I will share with you that our middle school and our high school are in very good shape in terms of enrollments and the capacity of those schools. However, both of our elementary schools are kind of tight at this point. So we have portable classrooms at Maple Avenue Elementary as well as Bartlett Elementary School, and we're in a wait-and-see type mode. Our building committee is looking at a variety of different options in terms of different configurations, and we don't expect that work to be completed by the building committee until probably the fall of this year.
Right, but for right now, there's nothing else proposed in CIP. This has been the project that the school's been concentrating on, as far as I know, and anything else would have to go
Right,
through
this
a
is the
whole
only
new
project
process.
that has really been focused on right now.
Thank you. Do you have any other questions, ma'am, in that regards? Okay. Is there anybody else who'd like to ask a question or make a comment on this application? Anybody there? I'm not seeing from the town administrator who's here, Derek Horn. Thank you very much for coming down and helping us run all this. I'm not seeing anybody else, so I'm going to close the public hearing at this point in time. This is not a matter that the planning board votes on, but if there are any members of the planning board who would have a comment that they would like to give to the school at this point in time, or in regards to the project as proposed, now's the time to have it. So, am I hearing anybody there? All right, so I would have to say, I'm looking at this sort of conference phone on a table, like somehow it's gonna provide me a signal of what is going on the other end of all these lines. Clearly, that's not happening. So, I'm looking intently at it, like it's supposed to do something. I'm not hearing anything, so it looks like we are very similar to the Conservation Commission, that we have no comments, and since we're all members of this community, good luck with the project.
We would like to thank you and the board members, the town staff. You guys have been great to work with. This is the third or fourth project we've helped the school out with in the last couple of years, and working with you folks is a pleasure. You guys have a great system in place. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And yes, Scott Gross, on behalf of the Goffstown School District and the school board, wanted to thank the planning board for their help, and as well as the town departments. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. All right. We are now moving on as a planning board tonight to new business. The first item of new business is map 5, lot 14-1. I understand that joining us will be,
Excuse me.
Next to
We're on
no,
map
it's gonna, no,
18.
I'm on the wrong page. I'm already past it.
1858.
18.
We will be here on map 18, lot 58. Is Eric DeBrule of Boiler here?
Yes, Eric DeBrule with Bowler.
Great. Thank you. All right, this is a completeness review, conditional use permit, site plan review application of McDonald's USA LLC owners for proposed renovations to the existing McDonald's building. This is on 114A, along with site improvements that include an additional drive-through lane, changes to the parking layout, and a walkway to the public right-of-way, Mast Road. A conditional use permit is required to add the additional drive-through per section 5.2, which I'm gonna address in a minute, as well as a conditional use permit for the reduction in current parking spaces per section 7.5, 7.521, 7.522 of the Goffstown zoning ordinance. The property is located at 569 Mast Road. It is zoned commercial. Board members, you had a number of materials at page 10, and I understand that there is a recommendation that there is no regional impact and this application is complete. Is there a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second? Tim?
I'll second.
Okay, Peter seconds. Is there any further discussion on that motion?
We have waivers requested. So they have to be granted for exception purposes only.
Can you, would there be a modification to that for the waivers? I was focused on the conditional use permit. There are some waivers. Is that subject to the waivers for acceptance purposes only? Thank you. All right, I'm gonna call for a vote. David?
Yes?
Tim?
Yes?
I vote yes. Kimberly?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Phil?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
All right. People viewing this should see on their screen a site plan of the proposed changes. I'm going to ask Joanne to go through it. If you've read your packet, you understand that there are actually the drive-through lane for pickup is remaining at 1. The proposal is for 2 orders. And we,
I don't know what happened, but I can't hear.
Somebody has a phone.
We have an audio.
does somebody have a phone on or a computer on in addition to the phone?
Yeah, I'm on a landline.
Somebody has 2 feeds.
Somebody's got 2 feeds coming in, we think.
I'm on a cell phone, but I'm muted.
You sound like you're in a canyon somewhere.
We're getting this echoing.
There's an echo going on, and I'm looking for Derek to put, are you looking to see where the
I'm looking to
interference?
see, but I've got, all board members are, you can hear them, somebody might have, does somebody have the TV on? But I think that's delayed.
Muted. Unmuted.
Let's see. Again, I have everyone muted.
All right,
Not doing it now.
can all the board members hear me? Say yes if you can hear me.
Echo.
Yeah, Jim, you've come in pretty warbled from your location. Because if we're having audio problems, we're gonna have to suspend. All right, I just heard a ding. Can board members please say whether they can hear me clearly, yes or no?
Roll call, ask names.
This is Kimberly. I can't hear you very well.
All right,
This is Jim, I cannot hear.
okay, so we're having audio problems. I wonder if,
Are you trying to recall in?
you want me to try to call?
You have been dropped from the conference.
Oh, everybody is gone, it looks like.
Well, no, they're still on. Can I
Oh,
just
very good.
call back in?
Thank you for calling First Light's Conference Direct Service.
Please say your name, followed by the pound key.
Derek Horn. Let's see if that's any better.
Board members, this is Barbara Griffin. Can you hear me?
You're intermittent.
Kimberly, can you hear me?
No, not really very well.
Peter, can you hear me?
No, you're like in an echo chamber.
Jim, am I still coming in faintly?
No, you're in the echo chamber, you kind of faded now.
Okay. And Phil, are you getting the same thing?
Yeah, you're intermittent, and I have difficulty hearing Jim from the beginning of the meeting.
We all do.
Yeah. Okay. I am going to dial into the meeting to see what I hear, and if I hear what you're hearing, which is bad, we are going to have to suspend this meeting. under the rules regarding emergency access.
May I make a suggestion that we call back in again?
Mhm.
Let me just, I've already dialed the number, Peter, let me see what happens when I call in.
Can't hear a thing you're saying, I can't understand anything.
Yeah, go hang up and
There's a-
right back. I'll try on that landline.
An audio feed coming.
Okay,
back.
Jim, we heard that.
I can't understand him at all.
Barbara and Derek are trying to resolve the issue of two audio feeds.
Tim,
Please-
can you say something, please?
Please stand by.
Can you hear me now?
I can actually hear you on the phone calling in pretty well. All right. The echo is gone, it sounds like.
No, it's there.
No, it's there.
We shouldn't hear what you're saying. We haven't been hearing what you're saying. Only the people in their phones have been hearing what you're saying.
All right, am I still echo? Yeah, I am still echoing.
You're all broken up, Barbara.
All right, why doesn't, hold on, we might have you all call back in. I'd like to try to finish this meeting tonight and not have to continue it, but we'll do what we have to do.
Can't really understand what you're saying.
Hold on.
I can hear Joanne fine.
I'm on a landline.
Yeah, I am too.
I can hear you.
We have the members of the public, we have those presenting, and then there are a handful of butters. If they can call back in, what I can do is drop everybody, drop this line, and then restart it, and if it works.
All right. Everyone, I am sorry you can't hear it. Is there any visual for GTV tonight?
Yes, there is, yes.
So, are they recording me when I speak or not?
Yes, they're recording.
Okay. All right. It is, where's my phone? We have planning board members and members of the public online. It is 8:05. I am going to recess for 5 minutes. I'm going to ask that all board members and public members and applicants who have dialed in to please hang up and then at 8:10 dial in again. If we continue to have problems, we will be continuing this meeting to the next regularly scheduled planning board meeting. Thank you. 8:10.
Okay.
All right, good evening, everyone. We are now live on GTV. It is Thursday, April 23rd. We recessed the meeting for 5 minutes. I am calling it back to order. We had some technical difficulties in regards to what was happening. We have just accepted, for purposes of review, as to waivers, as complete, map 18, lot 58, which is McDonald's USA, an application to add an order lane to access the same drive-through window that exists there. I'm going to ask for planning board members to respond to my roll call, because I'd like to see who is here. I will go through the list in the same order as I did before we recessed. David.
Here.
Tim.
Here.
Kimberly. Kimberly. Peter.
Yeah.
Phil.
Yes.
Jim.
Yes.
All right.
Joanne.
Joanne, are you there?
Yes.
Sarah, are you there?
Yes.
Kimberly.
Kimberly, are you there?
I'm here.
All right, so we have everybody back on. Board members who are telephonically accessing this meeting, is the echo still there?
No.
Speak up.
No, sounds good, Mr. Chairman.
This is a fascinating experiment, because I can't keep most of you quiet when you're all sitting here, but when you're on the phone and I ask you to say something, nobody says anything. I don't know.
But Barbara, I had my hand up the whole time.
Very good, Jim.
All right. All right. Joanne, I'm gonna turn to you to take us through this. I understand Eric DeBrule is online. Is that correct, Mr. DeBrule?
That's correct.
All right, thank you. Joanne, you want to take us through this?
So McDonald's would like to do some renovations both to the interior and the exterior. Would be adding an additional drive-through lane only for purposes of ordering. They would pull up to, the lane would be widened. They would pull up a second menu board as you round the corner, and then eventually it goes into one lane for pickup. So the windows are not changing from what is there now. They're just trying to have a little bit more stacking room for ordering purposes. In order for them to do that, they need to eliminate some of the parking spaces. As you pull in on the right-hand side, there's parking, and then right after that is where the parking is being eliminated. And the reason for that is so that they have that second lane there. So they are asking for a waiver for the parking that they've eliminated, because they have less parking now than is required. They are doing some additional sidewalk, or I should say sidewalk. They're updating, and one of the other things they wanted to do was use concrete for purposes of ADA. They said it works better as far as maintaining versus asphalt. So Sarah had a discussion about that, and she can speak to that later. They're adding or changing out some of their signage on the building. The menu boards will change and become digital menu boards, which is a little bit more modern. And the directional signs will be changed out. Eric could speak about the inside work. I'm not as familiar with what's going on inside the building as I am with the site itself. There was some discussion with Sarah also about whether or not they were going to relocate the current dumpster. So she can fill you in on that as to what the agreement turned out to be, because they weren't sure if they were going to do it as of this morning. running, they decided to leave it as is. There is a memo for how they came up with the parking calculations, and that pertains to the waiver that they're asking for. And that's all I have for now.
Were there any comments from Conservation last night?
Yes. Been voted to recommend that the drainage should be controlled and followed as outlined in the detail provided by the town engineer in the staff recommendations to the planning board. So basically, they agreed with what Sarah had recommended.
Okay. Do board members have any questions for Joanne in regards to the overview of the plan that she just gave? All right, Joanne, before you go any further, I would like you to address the two things that were in our packet. Well, the waiver you've already gone to, that's the parking, they're reducing the parking, so they're asking a waiver, and we received a parking survey that they did in regards to the numbers. But there is also appears to be possibly the need for a CUP. You want to address that?
Sure. In the zoning ordinance, section 15 allows for restaurants in the commercial zone with a drive-through service. Well, this is an existing restaurant with a drive-through service. The only thing they're adding is another lane for ordering purposes. So after I reviewed this application, I didn't feel that there was a need for a conditional use permit because it's already an existing site, and they're not adding any windows or anything like that. They're not adding any additional footprint to the building. They're merely adding a second ordering lane, which will then merge into one.
All right.
So I don't see the need for a conditional use permit in this particular situation.
All right, Joanne, I'm going to poll the board members now for their position on it, because at this point, I understand that while the applicant did, as the zoning officer discussed with them as our planning and economic development director, you do not believe a CUP is necessary, and I don't want to waste anybody's time with the CUP application if we're in agreement with your recommendation that it's not needed. So I'm going to poll board members as to whether or not they think the CUP is needed. David?
The CUP is not required in this case.
Tim?
It is not required, in my opinion.
It is not required in my opinion. Kimberly?
Not required.
Peter?
Not required.
Phil?
Not required.
Jim?
No, I'll defer to Joanne assessment.
Okay, all right, so the CUP issue is not a matter of discussion as far as I'm concerned tonight. The planning director has recommended it is not needed, so we do not need to address that. Does any other are there any other questions of board members before I turn this over to the applicant? I'm seeing none. Mr. DeBrule?
Thank you. So just for the record, Eric DeBrule with Bowler Engineering. I appreciate Joanne's presentation and kind of run through of the proposal here. I'll be brief. If everyone has the colored site plan, or if that's up at the meeting, that's great. If not, it's essentially a colored version of our site plan sheet C4. What I'll do is I'll just walk everyone through.
Mr. Bowler, it is up, so you can run through it.
Perfect. So I'll start, essentially, as mentioned, it's an existing restaurant. It's been in operation for dozens of years with a single order point drive-through. And essentially what we're looking to do is make an exterior renovation to the building, an interior renovation to the building. We're not increasing the square footage of the building. So you'll see a lobby renovation, you'll see bathroom renovations and dining room renovations on the interior. All of the accessibility upgrades will be made to meet current building and ADA codes for the building. Relative to site improvements, I'll kind of just walk around the site going counterclockwise, starting at the driveway in the southeast corner of the site. It's an existing driveway. We're not looking to make any changes to it other than just adding some stop striping in bars. We're going to replace the directional signs that are there today at the exit and entrance. What's there today is a couple McDonald's arches, probably 3 or 4 feet high. We're going to replace those with a little bit more modern signage. I think each of those are under about 2 square feet. The freestanding sign will remain. As we drive kind of further into the site, on the right perimeter, those parking spaces will remain. The parking on the left against the building, those are 3 ADA stalls, which will remain. We'll just make sure we're making the necessary ADA improvements for slopes and dimensions. As you pull into the drive-through, under existing conditions, you have 1 order point, 1 speaker, 1 menu. What we're doing is we're adding that outside lane, so it's kind of that half moon, if you will, on the outside. So you can imagine, under existing conditions, if you come in and there's someone making a long order or a special order, there's no way for customers to get around there. So what you end up having is customers stacking behind that position. Under proposed conditions where we add the secondary outside lane, someone's making a long order in that primary lane, next customer would come in, recognize that, and then they could use the other lane, which essentially just processes those existing customers more efficiently. And you just move that stack, instead of behind those speakers and stacking back to Mass Road, you'll move that queue into the site and to the drive-through windows. So it's a much more efficient drive-through configuration. McDonald's likes to use this on all of their sites. They operate hundreds very similar like this. Most of the new landscaping, we've got roughly 33 new plantings. Most of that comes around where we're adding that drive-through, and that's where most of the disturbance is on the site, to add that in. If you look at the eastern corner of the site, there's 2 propane tanks. They're colored in blue. Those will be existing to remain, no change there. But what is there today that we're moving is the existing trash corral. We're actually moving that from the eastern corner to the northern corner, plan left, if you will. Be the same size trash enclosure. We'll replace it with Trex composite type material, so it'll be easy to maintain and visually look good. And that is just an easier spot for their employees to get to when they're walking the trash out. So it's just a safety and operational concern for McDonald's. You continue to drive around the site. The parking on the north and on the drive-through side doesn't change. That's all the same, so no real changes there. And then along the frontage of Mass Road, we're adding a sidewalk connection to connect the sidewalk on Mass Road into our site. And there'll be an accessible route all the way up to a public door to get into the building. So those are the bulk of the site layout changes. We are making some drainage improvements at the recommendation of town engineer. Essentially, how the site drains today, we're not changing it. It flows to 2 existing catch basins towards the rear of the site. What we're going to do is add in some inserts into those catch basins to make sure that trash, debris, grease, oil, those types of things are going to be collected prior to where it discharges. It continues downstream and eventually ends up in the Mystic Brook. So we're happy to accommodate that request, and we're also working on an operation and maintenance plan for stormwater that McDonald's is actively reviewing and ultimately will sign. And I believe that is a recommended condition of approval in the staff memo. It's really the bulk of the site layout improvements. We are proposing new wall signage. Essentially, it's going to be 2 wall signs. One is on the front face that faces out to Mass Road. On that elevation, it's going to be a 14 square foot arch logo and an additional arch logo on the southern side of that building. So 2 new wall signs, which I believe are fully compliant with zoning. Those are included in our submission. We are requesting a parking waiver waiver from section of zoning of 7.5.2.1 and 7.5.2.2. That's to essentially allow the reduction in the required amount of parking. The required 55 spaces, we're proposing 43. That reduction comes by way of adding in that side-by-side drive-through. And McDonald's operationally is extremely comfortable with the reduction in parking. These restaurants built, many decades ago were anticipating and had most of their business parked and then use the dining room. As the years go by, most of their business now is actually going through the drive-through. So they don't anticipate the need for that reduced parking. And to further support that, parking utilization memorandum was put together. Parking was observed in 2 peak hour sessions, one midweek and then one on a Saturday at peak hours between noon and 2. The peak was only 24 vehicles, where we're proposing 43. So we think it's a reasonable request, and we considered or requested the board consider that waiver. We talked about the conditional use permit, so we don't need to address that. And I think anyone has questions, I'm certainly here. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Questions, Tim?
Eric, my name's Tim. I'm one of the members. I'm looking at the plan. When you drive in the in driveway, what is in the area on the front corner of the building where that granite curbing, proposed limit of granite curbing is going to make a pretty big radius and come back around and tie into the existing sidewalk? What's going to be in that area?
I apologize. I didn't quite follow you. So you come in the
Where you're,
entrance.
you have a note on the plan where your new ADA sidewalk is going to connect by the exit for the drive-out lane. You have a note that says limit of proposed granite curb, and that follows across parallel to the front line and then makes a big radius by the stop bar, the do not enter area, then turns around and comes all the way back in and ties into the existing concrete sidewalk. What is in that area now and what is proposed for that area?
Gotcha. So in terms of landscape treatment,
Is there anything there? Is there an old playground thing that the kids used to go into, or has that already been removed a long time ago?
Removed.
no, I'm not. I don't believe there's any playground equipment on the property.
Well, the reason why I'm asking is because you're asking for reduction in your parking, but there's a large area there where parking could be accommodated, so you'd have to get such a large reduction in the parking. Had you considered putting any parking in that area?
We did not. I mean, I don't, just based on the need for parking, I don't think operationally, I don't think McDonald's needs it, and I think typically we like to, reduce additional pavement just for stormwater runoff and things of that nature. That was the thought process behind.
So then a follow-up to that is where you have your handicap parking located, it's part of your double-barrel drive-through lane. Do you expect that those handicap parking spaces will be blocked by people queuing, waiting for the ordering windows?
Under normal circumstances, I don't anticipate that. Obviously, there could be certain times where that could happen. I'm not going to say it can't, but even under peak conditions, I wouldn't expect it to happen.
I would think if anything, it would be an improvement to the current situation, because
Those are open spaces right now.
there's only one order lane now, and the order spot is not that much further down from where they're proposing to put it.
Well, I'm just asking the questions because I'm concerned that the single lane that's the bypass lane now, the 20-foot wide bypass lane,
Will get blocked.
would get blocked, and it would prevent people from being able to exit the parking area and get by there. So I wanted your opinion on queuing and how much queuing is going to be there and whether it would block even the bypass lane around the outside.
No, we definitely don't anticipate that. I think just based on the improvements with the side-by-side drive-through, we're definitely going to be being able to take in the orders much more effectively and more quickly. So what we're doing is trying to reduce the stacking, which you're concerned with, and this would definitely be a major improvement. So I wouldn't anticipate issues with what your concerns are.
Do you make those determinations based on data you get from other restaurants, or is this just a professional guess on your part?
McDonald's operates hundreds of these stores. They have some very proprietary data that they do use. They wouldn't invest hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars to make an improvement that would, prohibit, effectively make their business that's operating fine worse. So that data is available. McDonald's uses that, and that's how I can pretty confidently tell you that's gonna work well.
Thank you.
All right, questions from other board members?
Barbara, did we accept this?
Yes, we did. Phil made the motion and Peter
Yeah,
seconded
because there
it.
was the issue of adding the waivers to it.
I was concerned because I don't recall we did the waivers. Maybe we did.
We haven't acted on
We
it.
haven't acted on them, but we did,
For acceptance purposes.
for acceptance purposes. Any other questions from board members on this plan? Staff, comments, Sarah? What's going on with the drainage control and detail that conservation is recommending that be done that apparently is not there now?
So the way they wrote that comment was kind of confusing. I just made some, customization to the drainage maintenance agreement. Basically, they're moving Joanne, when she gave her summary, alluded to them moving keeping the dumpster where it is now. And I got emails as of the last email I got was last Wednesday, that they were considering keeping the dumpster in the same location it is now, which is different than what's shown on the plan. So I was hoping for some clarification on what decision they made, because it seemed like they didn't love the new requirements that I was suggesting.
So so you're saying that if the proposed dumpster, all right, let's hear, what is if the applicant could let us know what the plan is for the dumpster definitively?
Yes, so we're proposing to move it, so the plans reflect, the plans that we submitted to the board is what is actually happening now. There was some consideration to leave it, not touch it at all. That's not the case. We are gonna move that dumpster.
And Sarah, what does that answer do to your recommendation?
No, that's perfect. So the new location that's shown on the plan puts the dumpster very close to / almost on top of a drainage structure. And we were just a little bit concerned that, dumpsters get a lot of stuff in them, they might leak, it might go straight into that structure, and then there isn't a long distance between that structure and where the pipe directly outlets into Mystic Brook. Because McDonald's, Goffstown is an MS4 community regulated by the EPA, and this McDonald's falls within our MS4 area. So the town is responsible for keeping track of sites that discharge right into the water to make sure that they're not contributing to any impairment. So I suggested that on the two drainage structures, the one right next to, actually, I think I may have only suggested it on the one right near the dumpster.
Your suggestion and the paperwork we have is a catch basin inserted to remove trash and oil.
Yep, so that insert, I'm only requiring one at the structure right, under or next to the dumpster. So basically, sometimes they're called dandy bags. It's just it's like a bag that you put in the structure that will catch trash and oil, and then you can go clean it out. It just is kind of like a filter and protects the pipe and the downstream water, but water can still get through. So it's kind of an inexpensive maintenance thing that can be hugely helpful in terms of catching contaminants and preventing them from going into Mystic Brook. So then the other part of my recommendation was that McDonald's do testing at the outlet pipe. It's not town-owned, so we don't typically do sampling at private pipes. So this was like our best opportunity to get some testing done at that pipe to make sure the dandy bag is working and that the dumpster isn't impacting Mystic Brook. And all we're doing is requiring a sample once per year for the things that the town is required by EPA to test for. And I outlined this in the drainage maintenance agreement.
All right, I've got some questions here. Tim?
So, Sarah, if the applicant was to abandon that catch basin under the pad and bring it out farther into the paved area, would that do anything for your opinion on things?
I mean, if they were able to completely isolate, like I even suggested, like, could we maybe do like some curving around the dumpster so that like the dumpster water doesn't go to that catch basin? But it gets tricky with additional grading, and you still have stormwater that is going to be mixing with the dumpster byproduct, potentially. And for their site drainage to work, which they're not proposing any changes to the site drainage, because then you get into site work and it gets a lot more expensive. The bag in the catch basin and leaving it where it was like, I think the best thing I could think of.
This is Jim. You know, we don't have to let them move the dumpster if it's going to create a risk. We can say, no, that's not an appropriate location. Instead of jumping through hoops to make a design work.
Well,
that
no,
we
no,
don't
no,
like,
I
we
think
say
he's,
no.
I think the proposal is they're not moving the dumpster.
Yes, they are.
Oh, I'm sorry, we're back to they are. Everybody's correcting me here, thank you.
Yeah, we're trying to accommodate their desire to move a dumpster that's now creating a threat to a public resource. We can just say no.
Could I respond as the applicant, just real quick?
Let me just get one other comment here, and then you can respond to them. David?
No comment, but I believe the applicant in his presentation said that he agreed with the storm drainage modifications asked for by the town engineer.
All right, let's hear from the applicant.
Yeah, so I just did want to just clarify. So the dumpster is moving, so that's one. We are agreeing to Sarah's recommendation. We thought it was a great recommendation. We're also agreeing to doing the testing, which if there is an issue, those tests would show it, and then I think McDonald's would be required to do further action. And then under existing conditions, even if we didn't move that dumpster, the other catch basin would just pick up what's happening under existing conditions, and you'd have kind of the same issue in my opinion. So I think moving the dumpster and then agreeing to add the additional drainage treatment and the maintenance in the testing, I think is definitely going to be a vast improvement over just doing nothing and leaving the dumpster where it is. So hope that provide a little clarification. I do think it's an improvement.
Okay, so there's an agreement to Sarah's recommendation in regards to the catch basin and the annual testing, and Sarah, you revised the documents to reflect that.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from board members before I open this up for public hearing? I'm seeing none, so I'm gonna turn and see, there's no one here in the room here at Town Hall. Is there anybody online who would like to speak? They should hit pound. Star 9. Is there anyone here who would like to join our meeting telephonically to make comments on the proposal at map 18 lot 58, which is a renovation to the existing McDonald building? Seeing anybody?
I don't see anyone pressing star 9.
All right, we have some members of the public that are listening to us telephonically, but they are not pressing star 9, so I am going to close the public hearing at this time. Tim?
So I think we need to deal with the waiver request before we can discuss the conditional use permit for the reduced parking, whether they get the waiver or not.
Well, I don't think I think we've decided there is no conditional use permit, so we need to discuss the waiver as a board member, the applicant.
No, the conditional use permit we discussed earlier was whether they needed to do with the drive-up windows, not to do with, the conditional use permit is for reduced parking, isn't it?
No, that's the
Isn't
waiver.
that what I read?
That's the waiver. The parking is, Joanne, am I right? The CUP was for the 2 ordering lanes, which we took a poll, and they do not need, but the waiver they need for parking.
That's correct. The waiver is for the parking.
Okay, which the applicant addressed during his presentation. Okay. All right, so board members, other comments on this plan before we address it?
I have one question, Barbara.
Peter?
Now, at the current time, they take the large tractor trailers go around the building and park on the lower side towards the Mystic Brook. Is that still gonna have enough access to do that?
I'd ask the applicant to answer that, please.
Yes. We've made sure there's adequate circulation for large vehicles, emergency vehicles, things of that nature.
Okay. Tim?
Do we have to talk about the sidewalk that Sarah has comments on?
Oh, see, that's right. We haven't talked about the concrete sidewalk, Sarah. What's up with that?
So, Eric first mentioned it when McDonald's came to PRC that typically in the town we do asphalt sidewalks because when we do the winter maintenance and salt them, the asphalt just holds up a little bit better under the salt conditions. However, in speaking with McDonald's, I guess it's like they typically do concrete and they find it easier to meet ADA requirements with concrete. So it's not, in our opinion, it's not a big enough problem to demand asphalt if they are comfortable with concrete. We drafted an agreement that we sent over to them. It will be recorded and approved and signed by the Board of Selectmen. And it basically says that McDonald's will be responsible for maintenance and repairs on the sidewalk, and if the sidewalk starts to deteriorate because of salt use, that they won't hold the town liable.
Okay? Can I hear from the applicant on that?
But before you do it, don't we want to go one step further and put in a condition that they be maintained, the safety issue?
The agreement does say that, and they have to keep it in good repair, in good condition under ADA requirements anyway.
Well, but we want that to be our requirement as well, so we can enforce it. The ADA is sketchy enforcement sometimes.
All right, so given that, I guess I would ask the board to look at the recommended condition 16, which is on page 15 of the packet, and if somebody could tell me what the expectation is that we're talking about there. Tim?
I have a question. Jim, number 18 on page 15 says a maintenance and liability agreement for the sidewalk. Is that satisfactory language, Jim, for the sidewalk maintenance?
I haven't seen it, but based on what Sarah and Joanne said, I'm assuming if it
It's the
requires
same
the
wording
applicant
as
to
number
maintain
16.
the sidewalk, I'm okay.
All right, but
It's technically being called a temporary license and indemnification agreement. That is the official title of the agreement. We spelled this all out in and sent to them.
So to go back to you, Jim, is it winter maintenance you're talking about, or is it overall maintenance of the surface, Jim?
It's the latter. Sarah's concern is it degrades from the salt. We want to make sure it's maintained in a safe condition.
And I think Sarah said they addressed that, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, it will be addressed in the agreement.
Right.
It says, agree to perform all necessary maintenance and repairs to the private improvements to keep private improvements in good working condition.
So we don't have to add anything, that's what I'm getting to.
All right, but I guess my point is that when you worked on that, were you assuming asphalt or concrete, or do you not care based on the language of that agreement?
The agreement, I think we probably specified. Nope, we just call them private improvements, and I think we might mention a sidewalk. So if they decide they want to go with asphalt, that's fine with us too. Install a concrete sidewalk, since that's what they said they wanted to do.
All right, so.
But we wouldn't have any problem with them changing that if they wanted to.
Okay, Joanne, I need to get back to Joanne, because this just took an extra loop that I'm not really following. My understanding is the application as it stands is for concrete sidewalks. Joanne, is that correct? And what I've just heard from Sarah is she has a temporary license and indemnification agreement in regards to private improvements that she believes will address the maintenance and repair is what we're concerned about, as Jim says, in regards to the condition of that concrete. Is that correct?
Yeah.
All right, so does that mean that condition number 16, which you recommended, is not necessary because we're potentially agreeing that they can keep the concrete?
Correct, that can be removed.
All right, and do we need a waiver? Is asphalt required by our regulations or not?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay,
No, it is not.
okay. Other questions or comments on the plan? Tim?
Sarah, number 17 on our packet says that Mike Yurgo to provide a final review before plans are signed once DPW resumes normal operations. Are you able to get plans to Mike, or is Mike able to obtain plans so that these plans can be looked at sooner than whenever DPW resumes normal operations?
Absolutely.
Thank
These
you.
were written, these comments were written almost a month ago, so we weren't sure what the status was.
So can we just change that to Mike Yurgo to provide final review plans?
You can honestly probably delete it, because Joanne typically allows DPW to do a check before they're signed anyway, and he would look at it.
So that entire condition can be removed?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, board members, let's talk about the waiver then. There's been a request for a waiver of the parking requirement. They're eliminating spaces on the right side as you drive in order to provide the second lane for ordering. They've provided a parking utilization memorandum, which is observational summaries of what is needed with times and days. This was done in February, I believe, is my recollection, yeah. And so do board members have any comments on it? I will say, I don't have a particular problem with the loss of the parking spaces. I've been in that part, I've never seen all the parking spaces in that lot used. David?
This is David. I have no concerns about the reduction in parking spaces. I also agree with the chair's observations. I've visited the facility a number of times, and never have I seen all the spaces full.
Phil?
The applicant representative stated that the majority of the business is growing more towards a drive-through rather than a sit-down, and they base that on proprietary information that they have. They've been around long enough, and if they don't provide adequate parking spaces for their customers, they're going to lose business. And I think their proprietary information is probably accurate.
Other members? As to the waiver for parking?
Barbara?
Yes.
Pete here.
Peter?
As you know, I live right down the street from there. I don't think I've ever seen that parking lot full. That lower lot is empty 90% of the time.
Okay. Tim?
I agree with everyone. I think I accept the engineer's information as correct.
All right.
Barbara, this is Jim. We have unfortunately have to read the zoning ordinance occasionally. And if you look at section 7.5.2, it's entitled Construction of Fewer Parking Spaces. Authorization may be granted to construct fewer, and 7.5.2.1 says provided that sufficient land area is allocated and shown on the site plan for the full number of spaces required. We did that, for example, with the Y. On the other hand, if you go to 7.5.4, parking requirements, it says the total required number of spaces, depending on the number of spaces involved. Shared arrangements, that's a shared parking, so that doesn't apply. So the applicable provision is 7.5.2. Now, I think their reduction makes all sorts of sense. I agree with it. It's just, do we ignore that clause in the zoning ordinance and just grant it to them about showing additional spaces available? Or can the applicant, by verbal presentation, assure us that if they had to build out, they could?
This is the applicant. I think our waiver request was specifically from 7.5.2.1 and .2 to waive both of those items so that it would allow us to reduce the parking. That's kind of how we were envisioning the waiver request.
I understand, but for us to waive, again, I'm not arguing with the substance of their request, but we can't waive the ordinance unless the ordinance allows us to, unlike a CBA. So we have to find some way that we've at least look like we're complying. So I'd suggest if the applicant could tell us that, yes, there is additional room on site, such as the nice front park that Tim wanted to table a few minutes ago, we could say, yes, there is space on the plan if necessary to provide parking, so we can not require it now.
Did the applicant understand that point?
We can nod, wink, wink so far, but at least give us something to hang on.
Yeah. So I think we'd be comfortable saying that we could, on the site and throughout the property, find the additional parking spaces to meet the minimum requirement, which I think is what you're referencing is 7.5.2.1 to make sure we're meeting that requirement.
Correct.
Thank you.
If the applicant makes that representation, I think we can act on it.
Yeah, I can say that.
Joanne, will you please circle that paragraph for review?
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Can you please circle that parking paragraph .1 for review? Because it is
Okay.
an or, as Jim pointed out, but it does raise some questions as to the parking waiver.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions on the parking waiver? Any other comments or questions on this plan? A review of the proposed conditions indicate that, frankly, from what I can tell, Joanne, absent the waiver, the conditions seem to be fairly straightforward, with the exception of what we've addressed for the catch basin and agreement, which the applicant has reviewed. Is that correct?
Yes. The one thing that I noticed the other day when I drove over there to take a look at the wooden guardrail, there's a fairly large section that's been damaged, it looks like by a vehicle, and it's all smashed. And I'm hoping that I didn't see anything on the plan about the guardrail, and I'm hoping that is repaired and replaced.
Okay.
I think that's covered in condition 10.
Yes.
I noticed that one of the recommendations was a requirement for an excavation permit for the proposed sidewalk. Is that necessary or not? It's not on the final conditions.
Permit.
DBW is gonna handle that with the permitting?
It's number 15.
Okay.
Conditions.
Yeah, it was number 15 on the packet that was mailed to us, but it's not in the conditions tonight. Okay.
It's
This
number,
should probably be in the conditions.
it is in the conditions on page 15 as number 15.
I understand that, but we have a chair's agenda that has 16 conditions, not 18. So I'm trying to figure out what is included and what isn't. And the excavation.
I'm looking at my staff report, and that's what I go by for the final, end result of when I look at the conditions, make sure that they've all been addressed. So I'm not looking at the chair's agenda.
Well, in the chair's agenda, 15 is not there anymore, and 16 is not there anymore. And we've determined 17, which is 15 in the chair's agenda, which appears to be the final conditions, is not needed. That's Mike Yurgo. So there needs to be, if we could have staff get that together for next time, that would be helpful.
Okay. That might be a matter of like cutting and pasting. But you should have, with the two conditions that were removed tonight, you should have 16 conditions total.
Okay, so we'll go off the packet. Tim,
Would you like to act on the waiver and make a motion?
so, go ahead.
Prior. So, I'd like to make a motion that we grant the waiver request from zoning ordinance section 7.5.2.1 and 7.5.2.2, reducing the total number of spaces to 43, based on the applicant's representation that there is sufficient area on-site to reconstruct the spaces that were deleted if needed.
I'll second that.
Been moved and
Yes.
seconded to grant the waiver. Is there any further discussion?
May I suggest that in accordance with the pesky zoning ordinance, we have to find that the actual parking demand indicates that a lower number of parking spaces will safely accommodate the parking needs of the principal use. If you add that to your motion, then we've complied with the statute of the ordinance.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you for your help, Jim. Yes, I'll add that to my motion.
Sorry, somebody insists on reading this damn thing, but I guess that's my role.
That's your job.
David seconds.
Thank you, Jim. We've gotten so that the conditional use permit information is all in the packet. Now we just have to work on the waiver stuff. All right. So thank you for keeping that online. Is there any further discussion on the waiver? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Oh, sorry. I'm looking at the conference call phone again, expecting the conference call phone to say aye. David?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
I vote yes. Kimberly?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Phil?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Thank you. So the waiver has been granted. We now have a plan before us. There are 16 suggested conditions. Is there a motion?
What was the other one that was removed?
On the staff.
16 and 17 on the staff
16
report.
and 17, thank you.
Tim?
I'd like to make,
I have a question. I have a question before you do that.
Sure.
Did we, I see this, Jim. I see number 18. It's for a maintenance liability agreement for the proposed sidewalk. Do we have the maintenance agreement for the dumpster? Is that what number 11 is, the drainage maintenance agreement, or is that included in the I guess that's in number 12. So we've covered Sarah's concerns in these
Yeah.
conditions. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Jim, for clarifying that those concerns were addressed. Tim, do you have a motion?
Make sure I word it correctly. Is this considered an amendment to the site plan, or what is the proper terminology to this?
This is,
Since we didn't have to issue any conditional use permits, is this an amended site plan?
Joanne, is this an amended site plan?
It was advertised as a site plan review hearing because I was told that if it's more than a few years old from the initial site plan, that the board looks at it as a brand-new site plan, but technically it is an amendment to an existing site plan. That was an old site plan.
Okay, so that's the correct terminology to use then, Joanne, in the motion?
I believe so.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to grant the applicant's request to amend the site plan to include the conditions 1 through 16 on the report we have.
So that's 1 through 15 and to 18.
Well, there's 16 total.
Right, okay.
1 through 15 and 18, if you want that to be spoken that way.
I want to make sure that's what gets in, okay. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Phil seconded it. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. David?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
I vote yes. Kimberly?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Phil?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Thank you. That concludes our review of map 18, lot 58.
Talk to Mr. Bowles.
Thank you to the applicant for coming. And-
Thank you, everybody, for your time.
All right, so be in touch with planning in regards to what the next steps are.
Perfect.
The next item on our agenda tonight is map 6, lot 43. Is Jason Hill on the line?
He is, I need to unmute him.
Okay.
All right, there he is.
Jason, are you here?
Hi.
Thank
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. All right. This is map 6, lot 43. This is a completeness review, conditional use permit, site plan review application of Goffstown Green Thumb Landscaping applicant. Teresa Mahoney and Jay Barron are owners for a proposal to convert a single-family home into a landscape nursery with retail, a shop, and a garden center, which is a garden center. A conditional use permit is required as the lot doesn't meet the frontage requirement that allows for a second driveway access. We'll discuss that in a minute. That's a determination that's been made that I don't believe our planning director is recommending. And the property is located at 278 Mast Road. This is zone commercial industrial flex zone. This is approximately across from the Irving Station on Route 114. There are 3 waivers requested, and the board will have to make a determination as to whether or not a conditional use permit is required. Joanne, is this application been accepted? Is it complete?
Yes, it's complete and there is no regional impact.
All right, and so if we accepted the application at this time, the waivers would be for acceptance purposes only.
So I'll make a motion to accept this application as complete and ready for review with no regional impact, and to grant the waivers for acceptance purposes only.
Is there a,
Second.
it's been moved and seconded by Peter. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, I'm gonna call for a vote. David?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
I vote yes. Kimberly?
Yes.
Peter?
Yeah.
Phil? Jim?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Joanne, I want you to give us an overview of this proposal. We have seen this before, and I would like you to get right then to the conditional use permit issue, because what I wanna do is to address that right off the first. I am unfortunately gonna have to leave the meeting early, and after we do that, I'm gonna be turning the meeting over to Tim. So Joanne, why don't you introduce this to us?
Okay, so this is an existing single-family house, and it was part of a rezoning effort that was done in that area across from the Irving Station. There were several properties right in a row that were rezoned to the commercial industrial flex zone, I don't know, maybe 10 or so years ago. So the applicant would like to let the existing structure, use the existing structure and tear down the detached garage and shed, but retain the building itself, which is the house, and turn it into a garden center with offices upstairs and the office for the garden center on the main floor. There would be outdoor display in the back area where you see clearing through that group of trees. There would also be display off to the right side. The applicant is looking to take the two driveways that exist and turn them into a horseshoe with looping around in the back, so it would have a horseshoe effect. So it would be a one-way in, one-way out. The two driveways have existed since approximately 1988. They are permitted by the state of New Hampshire. This portion of Mass Road is, the driveways are under the state's jurisdiction. So they have applied for the DOT permits to update what's there now. Whenever there's a change of use, they need to update their permits. And waiting to hear back. They haven't actually finished their review with this yet. The fire department is fine with the turnaround, the way it's presented. They can get their truck all the way around. So it's actually a good idea to have it set up the way it is. We're asking for 4 waivers, three waivers, which you would review that at a later time. You want me to cover the conditional use
Yeah, I'd
permit?
like you to address that first, because I've got to get out of here.
Okay, currently, the zoning ordinance requires that you have a certain amount of distance between one driveway to another, and in the case of a commercial use, it's 100, let me see here, separation is 125 feet from the intersection and 100 from an existing driveway. As I stated before, these two driveways are existing. They're not changing in any way at the access points, and they are permitted by state permit, driveway permit, not town driveway permit. So I don't feel that a conditional use permit is actually needed for this application because it's an existing site, it's an existing use. The only thing that's changing is it's going from residential to commercial. The DOT will be looking at that, and they may come back and recommend that they have only one driveway access, but we won't know that until they've done the review. So I don't really believe the town needs to worry about the fact that it doesn't have enough frontage for the two driveways because they've been existing now since the 80s.
I'd like to introduce a piece of new information right now, if it's okay, Joanne.
No, you're
Phone
not even
call or-
identified yet. You're not, technically,
Okay.
I'm glad you're here, Jason,
No
but,
problem. It's related to the conditional use permit, but I'll stand on hold.
all right. So, and Joanne, a suggested condition is a driveway permit from New Hampshire DOT. Does that relate to this issue?
Are you talking to me or Jason?
Joanne.
Yes, this requires a driveway permit from New Hampshire DOT, and I don't believe that the town would also be requiring a conditional use permit for driveways that are existing. If the DOT comes back and says, they need to do something, then that's a different story. But I don't think the town needs to require a conditional use permit on an existing site. Two existing driveways the location of those driveways are not being changed in any way, other than that back portion into the lot, which turns it into a horseshoe effect.
Okay. Tim?
So Joanne, are you saying that we are unsure if the DOT has issued both driveway permits at this time? Is that what you're saying?
There's two driveway permits that exist, but they have applied for an updated permit due to the change in use. So that's what we're waiting for now, is the review by DOT, and when they do their review, then they will issue their driveway permit.
All right, okay, thank you, Joanne. So Jason, can you identify yourself for the record? Do you have something specific to this issue?
Yeah, this is Jason Hill from TF Moran on behalf of me and Tom and Adam Vermakowitz. It was late in the day, but I received a correspondence from DOT, Bill O'Donnell, and he indicated that the DOT was had no issues with the I'm trying to think of the proper terminology, but the actual arrangement and the reuse of the two existing curb cuts, basically allowing us to proceed with this plan with a one-way circulation pattern, entry only on the east side, exit on the west, and allowing these two driveways to continue in their current as proposed tonight for you. They did have a comment that I will, he would like me to look at some of the turning radiuses, specifically like the right turn in, which is also a comment of the fire department. And we probably will widen just the driveway, the entry driveway off of Mass Road for right turns in, to make it a fatter radius, so it's more an easier turning movement for the fire truck apparatus. However, the DOT was amenable to the proposed design and the utilization of both driveways and one-way clockwise circulation pattern, which is the same plan that was before you tonight.
All right, and
I
so,
spoke with them around 4 o'clock today.
all right, thank you, Jason.
Over the phone.
Thank you, Jason. All right, Joanne, it is my understanding that you're recommending that this be continued to 5/14 or 5/28. So is this something that you would anticipate would be worked out as to the turning radius and what the actual driveway is gonna be for that final approval?
Yes, the fire department did make those recommendations, so that will all be worked out when the DOT finalizes their review and actually issues the permit itself. Jason will need to update the plans to show those changes.
Okay, so the recommendation is that this plan is going to get, your recommendation at this point is to continue this so that the application can be complete.
The application is complete. It's just that they would make minor changes based on the staff review as well as state.
Okay, thank you. Tim?
So if we're just talking about minor review changes to the, somebody talking there?
No, keep going.
So if we're talking about minor changes to the entrance design based on a DOT requirement, can't we leave that up to the staff to handle that and not require this come back for that one single item?
All right, I just wanted to bring that issue up in regards to where this is going, because I'm gonna be leaving after this discussion on the driveway. So, I think that's a valid point by Tim in regards to the board's consideration, but what we opened up this discussion on was for whether or not we're gonna require this applicant to get a conditional use permit in regards to the driveways. So I am going to do
But
what I,
Barbara, may I be heard on that?
yep,
I respectfully I think this site, we could grant a conditional use permit. I disagree with Joanne's analysis. This site was a residential site in a residential district. She said the only thing that's changed is the use. Well, that's like saying the only thing that happened to the Titanic is it sunk. It's a change, it's a major change in use, and there's been a rezoning, so it's a different district. Grandfathering usually applies to the, if it's a use to that use that is then in effect. They're coming in with a new use under current requirements. I don't think you can find because the residential had 2 driveways. I don't mind granting a conditional use permit here, but I don't want to suggest that something that was, and then you make a major change in use, we're still going to allow if it's not otherwise complying with our ordinance.
all right, thank you, and thanks for that comment, but I wanted to have this discussion, so when we hear from the applicant, we can either have the CUP addressed or not. So, having heard Jim's comment on the conditional use permit in regards, reminding us that we do have our own ordinances that are to be complied with, I'm gonna take a poll of whether or not you think a CUP should be granted for this in light of the fact that this is, it might be the same driveway, but it's a change in use. David?
I have no problems with the conditional use permit for the 2 driveways.
So, do you think they need one or not?
Do not.
They do not.
Oh, excuse me. Yes.
Yes, they do.
It-
Okay. All right, because the applicant is gonna have to address it. All right, Tim?
I think they do need a conditional use permit because of the change in use.
All right, agreed, they do need it. Kimberly?
Agreed.
Peter?
Agreed.
Phil?
Yeah, I agree.
Jim?
Yes, I agree.
All right, so, the board will have to address the issue of both the waivers and conditional use permit. I think Joanne has addressed the application itself. I'm gonna turn this over to Tim.
All right, well, I don't think we can deal with the conditional use permit tonight because we do not have the criteria or the answers for this. So this is gonna definitely have to be continued at this point.
All right.
So we did file the paperwork for the conditional use permit. This is Jason.
Well, I don't
It
have,
was a part of our application.
Yeah,
I don't have it in front of me tonight. I'm sorry, Jason. It was not submitted to us that I can find unless I'm not looking in the right spot. Yes, I do. I did find
yeah,
it.
it
You are
is.
correct. I
It's in
found
the,
it.
for board members, it's in the actual application packet.
Yep, that's where I
Jason
found
did
it.
do it because when he came to the town, he was told that that was what was needed, so that's what he gave us. Thank you, Jason. So
We got that.
we do have that to address. So thank you, board members. I apologize, I need to leave. Tim,
problem.
thank you for taking over.
Okay,
No problem.
so, why don't we have Jason give us an overview of the project to start? Joanne, are you done with what you had to say, Joanne?
Excuse me?
Do you have anything else to add before we ask Jason to give us an?
No, go ahead.
So Jason, if you would please give us an overview of the project.
Okay, thank you. Joanne did a good job of describing the project. So, that all aside, the only thing I'd like to add, she covered the change in use, the driveway and access situation, the proposed improvements, which would basically consist of this U-shaped driveway, as well as like a nursery area in the back of the site. There's 2 culvert crossings, one existing, one proposed. We're applying to the Wetlands Bureau for those permits, and I met with the Conservation Commission. And like I said, the state today had verbally given me an okay with the reuse of the 2 existing driveways, one with circulation pattern. And I did file initially a CUP application because it was initially determined, back in, say a month ago, whatever, by Nancy Larson under the initial review that the CUP may be required. So I did prepare and file the CUP application. I could go into the specifics or not on the rationale. However, in general, I'll say that if you look at the design and what we're proposing, we weighed a few things into account. Fire access being one of them. Secondly, wetland impacts being another concern, as well as, minimizing excessive costs. And then just for my client, his main focus or concern, which is accessibility and convenience to the people who are delivering the products to the site and the customers. So when we balanced all those things together, we ended up with the realization that this one-way driveway kind of balances all those things the best. And for that reason, we're proceeding with this plan. And I've kind of explored some of the language of that in the conditional use permit, which I've on hand. It's with the town, and I can go into the specific details of it, but to boil it all down, that's really what it's all about, was a blending of the major factors, both of the town environmental and my client's concerns. And for those reasons, I think we've come up with the best plan to kind of address everyone's collective concerns. The site's not a big site, and so there's not a lot of usable space for the display of the inventory. And so if we go with a one-way driveway, we have to have fire access on multiple sides. It eats up a lot of excess space. You have to build a 2-lane road. The wetland crossing is greater in terms of its the length of impact. The wetland in and of itself is a ditch, a low-valued wetland, but a jurisdictional area all in and of itself. But so we have come up with the best balance, I believe, to mitigate all the concerns of all the affected parties. And so the conditional use permit that the criteria that I've submitted to the town lays that out in words, but this is a summary of that, all of that in and of itself. So I'll just leave it to that and answer any questions you may have.
Could you please just tell us?
Thank you.
Could you please tell us about what your changes are for the building itself, for the two different floors?
Yeah, so I did not get into that. It's really minimal changes at this point architecturally into, so it'll be a renovation of the structure, but there's no real significant, at least exterior improvements. There's no additions, but it would basically be kind of gutting and rehabilitation of the interior floor space to make like a retail use of the first floor. And then second floor would be, which is formerly like bedrooms, this was a single family house, would be like office space that was associated with the business. It's not going to be rented out to other, it's not going to be leased office space. It's going to be just accessory or, so it'll be basically the first floor retail floor space, which is approximately 1,200 square feet, is going to be similar to like, you'd have it like an Osborne Agway or something like that, where you can have, there'll be a small area for like farm to table coolers where you can get fresh eggs and things like that from local farmers. And then just simple trinkets and local retail products, similar to like what you find in like those rooms in the Agway stores and things of that nature. Although it's a very small retail area, we don't need the parking that you need to have at one of those stores like an Agway. because we're only dealing with like a 1,500 square foot area, and the primary focus of the business is for retail and wholesale for small local landscapers to purchase trees, shrubbery, grasses, and things of that nature. Similar to, like, I think the closest thing that I could think of to what we're proposing is Grasshoppers, which is in New Boston, New Hampshire, adjacent to just west of Goffstown Village, Sully's. So something like that, but a smaller scale in terms of the size of the site. So the traffic is not a concern. We've looked at it as part of our application with the DOT for the driveway permit. There'll be minimal traffic impacts. There's plenty of, the amount of traffic generation is substantially low enough where there's no like turning lanes that are necessary for this project. So, and it'll help the tax rolls a little bit because we'll obviously be getting some more of a use. The land value would be expected to be improved upon this project. So, coming from a commercial or a residential single-family residence, so it'll be, I think, good for the town. So it's a good fit. He's a local guy, Adam Bermakowitz, and local family, and they're just looking to kind of expand, and it would keep the landscaping business, which is Goffstown Green Thumb, at its current location, which I believe is Wallace Road. They wouldn't move any of their equipment onto the site, so I think it's a good opportunity for everybody.
Question two.
Go ahead, David.
This is David at the planning board. Jason, to the rear of the horseshoe driveway, you have an area labeled display area outdoor storage. Would also have a portable greenhouse there. I would be concerned if that whole display area turns in to be impervious surface. What's the intentions of the ground treatment there?
Adam intends on having at this point, a single temporary portable greenhouse structure. I believe I've submitted an example plan to Joanne, although I'm not 100% certain on that, but this would be like a typical 50 by 12 portable that you could get at like even like a Lowe's. But the actual physical ground cover that we're proposing over the nursery stock area is a grassed.
Thank you, Jason.
Finish similar to like if you go to Bro Shoe Nurseries in Concord, where you can walk the aisle and look at your tree specimens.
Thank you, Jason. You've addressed my concern.
No problem, David. Thank you.
This is Joanne. The rendering of the greenhouse itself is in your packet as part of the plan set.
Jason, you've asked for several waivers regarding plantings. Could you go over the landscape plan, please?
Yeah, it's really, I'm kind of being, I think, looking back at it, we have no problem complying, kind of borderline whether it's necessary, but there's a frontage requirement for shade trees, and so it's 1 per 40 feet of frontage for new developments. So right now we're proposing to kind of put some shade tree in front of the building, but we didn't want to put too many shade tree in front of the building to obscure too much of the view of it. So I believe that the request, and I'm going to pull it up so I can properly.
What page are you referring to?
C8, looks like. Are you on C8, Jason?
Okay, I will be.
I think that's.
I'm switching to this set right now, and that probably covers the waivers in the legend. So now I am on C8, which is the landscaping plan, and And I'm reviewing the plan and the notes of the plan where we are, usually we would specify that where the waivers are required, but I know that in Goffstown, they're required, I believe, 1 tree per 40 lineal feet of frontage off of a highway or a road. And so we're requesting relief to only provide 2 instead of 3 of those trees for this project. And the reason is that we're having a lot of, in the areas where we're omitting the tree specimens, we're proposing to have landscaped display area, so it'll still be vegetated. It's going to be temporary, not permanent. We can put the tree in, no problem. It's just that we feel that basically the nature of the use is going to be not necessarily a permanent mature shade tree there, but there'll be always product in that area. So that's our argument for the waiver, although it's not, I would say, critical to the performance of this project. But
Jason, is there,
the other 2 waivers? Go ahead.
is there a sewer easement on the front of this property somewhere that you're not allowed to plant in?
There's a sewer easement that runs approximately 10 feet off of Mass Road for municipal sewer. And it doesn't preclude plantings in it. So there is a sewer easement, but they don't specify, my knowledge, that trees cannot be planted within the easement, although you would not want to plant, obviously, around the sewer line itself. But the owner assumes responsibility. If he plants a tree that needs to be dug up, I think that the town has the right to remove that tree with their own, without any consequence. So, but yes, to answer that question, there is. There's a 25-foot sewer easement that runs parallel with Mass Road, and the trees that we are planting are on the outside of the easement. That's actually a hardship to us, where we've given you a sewer easement, meaning the town. We've allowed the town to come through with a sewer easement, creating a corridor where we really can't plant the street trees. And so I think that would be another thing in support of our waiver request for the street tree requirement.
What I was asking you to do was to describe the landscaping plan. I didn't necessarily want to go into the waivers, but it's okay that you did, so I just wanted to have you describe what the landscaping plan entailed around the house.
So there's a combination from Mass Road. There's a porch, an existing porch in front of the house that's currently, it's just a lawn area in front of the house, and we'd be providing some screening of the porch, some low ground level screening, azalea, hibiscus, hydrangeas, spiraeas, wiglea, detailed on the sheet that you mentioned, sheet C8, which has been designed by a licensed landscape architect. That will really dress up that plan, and there will be 2, I believe they're crab apple trees, which is actually a hibiscus. They're the weeping cherry trees I'm looking at now, the snow fountains. So those trees are a shade tree that'll be planted along the frontage of the road. But we would need an additional 1 or 2 trees to comply with the requirements of the town. We're trying to, because we're restricted in terms of this sewer easement that you have mentioned, our signage has to be back outside of the easement. So we're limited in terms of the signage, the freestanding signage for the actual property. You can see the location of it on C7, but because we have to have our signage so far off of Mass Road, we're asking also to have less trees basically to the east. So I'm planting the trees on the west side, 2 of the 4 trees, the street trees. But because the sign is encumbered by the easement that the former landowner granted to the town of Goffstown, where our sign has to be 20 feet plus or minus off the road, we need visibility. And for that reason, we don't want to plant those trees to the east of the site to block the signage.
Okay,
So that's really the true rationale for the waiver request.
Okay, and while you're on that page, you also have exterior lighting. Would you like to address that the lighting will meet our standards?
Yeah, one of the comments from the town review was that there was a little bit of too much brightness in the right-of-way from the proposed wall pack lighting facing Mass Road, and we have revised the plan. The lighting designer has changed the fixture type so that it concentrates the light on the ground more, so it's not spreading. And you can see that if you look at the contour lines on sheet C9, you can look at how tight those contour lines are, and the fact that there's no spillage onto Mass Road. That was a direct response to the comment from Sarah and/or Joanne.
But the lights will meet the night sky ordinance that we have set forth in our regulations.
Yes, they will be full cutoff, downcast, and they will also meet the zoning requirements for trespass.
Okay, I'd like to ask Sarah, does Sarah have any comments at this time before I ask board members to talk?
The lighting plan that I still showed that the levels were over the zoning requirement of 0.2 foot candles at the property line. It doesn't really have anything to do with the right-of-way or the street. The regulations say at the property line, so we're front, so.
We agree to
The
comply
latest
with the
plans
ordinance.
I had.
I can send you a plan, but we definitely have no issue with that requirement. We agree 100%.
Sarah, was anything?
Although that comment still stays because I don't see that it has been changed on the plan.
No problem.
Sarah, do you have any?
We've already designed it. I'm looking at the preview you will see, and you should have had it for you. I'm sorry that you don't have it, but no problem.
Sarah, how about your drainage? Everything good with the drainage on site?
Drainage was all good. Our comments were pretty minor. There were just a few label changes.
Sure, no
Yeah,
problem.
the plans were in good shape.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. So I'd like to.
You've done a good job, Sarah, I'd like to say, in terms of, we put this in pretty fast, and you've done I'd like to thank all of the town departments. You guys have been working just as fast as we've been working, in terms of being proactive, and really appreciate that. You guys, Goffstown has been a very good place to do work. You guys are definitely on your game still and not slowing down. So thanks, Sarah.
Okay, I'm going to open this up to board members. Do any board members have any questions? Okay. So at this point, before we address waivers, I think I need to open the public hearing. So, open the public hearing at this point and ask Derek if we have anyone calling in.
There are people on the line. They need to press star 9 if they want to speak.
So, anyone who wants to speak on this application from the public will have to press star 9 to be connected, and you'll also have to identify yourself for the record. So, Derek, you have someone ready to go?
Not seeing anyone that wants to speak.
People are listening.
People are listening, but they're not.
Okay.
Don't want to be heard.
So we have no one that wants to speak at this time. So, since this is gonna be continued, I'll suspend the public hearing at this time. So, board members, would you like to talk about the waivers? The first one is the development regulations for Appendix F, Section 2.2D, minimum standard for landscaping with regard to shade trees every 40 feet along the existing and new roads. So I'm gonna open that up to discussion for the board members. Are you
And
all,
this is Kimberly. I think you did a good job explaining why they wouldn't meet the requirement, and I have no concerns with the waiver.
thank you, Kimberly. Anybody else?
No, I'm good.
I don't need to do a roll call, I'll just,
Number 2.
This is Jim. I'm gonna suggest that if we're gonna grant the waiver, because every site asks for a waiver, you have to have a reason other than natural site conditions, but it would be along the lines of landscaping that this applicant is providing that we find gives an equivalent effect. I don't wanna have just a precedent of, we can't plant all the trees, but don't make us, that doesn't fly. But I think, and Jason rightly is concerned about visibility to the sign, but everybody has that problem. What we can recognize here is this is a use that by its nature has landscaping, and that we can accommodate that, I think.
thank you, Jim.
You're right, Jim. Now that you described it appropriately.
Okay, I'm not looking to vote, I don't know if I wanna look for motions at this point unless someone feels so inclined to make a motion. All right, the second request for, yes, Jim?
Jim, are we gonna continue this? Which
I understand we
would be
are going to
my
be,
desire.
I think we are going to be continuing it at the planning director's recommendation.
So I think we can either vote on these now or at least say that we can move on them, but there's been no objection raised, so that applicant doesn't have to prepare for them the next go-round and limit the issues. But if we are getting to a late hour, so I'm not anxious to add to our list of actions you have to take.
All right, so, Jim, would you recommend that I do a head count on this for recommendation purposes, or leave it alone for tonight?
No, I would go through the other waivers to see what are gonna be hotly debated.
Okay,
And then, we could schedule them at the next time. I don't think we're gonna change our minds between now and then, so we can do it that way, that'd be efficient.
thank you. So, doesn't seem to be a lot of problem with the first development regulation waiver for the planting of shade trees. The second waiver is for development regulation, Appendix F, Section 2.3, landscaping for the parking lot interior. So Jason, would you like to address that, please?
Much along the same line, other than we don't have an easement restriction. It's just that we're a small parking lot of 10 spaces. To meet the strict requirements, which I always push my landscape architects, I'm saying, why do we need this easement? There's 6 parking spaces, to do that, it only shuffles the parking lot around in my situation, where I have 10 spaces, all I need to do is stick a finger in the middle of it, and comply with your ordinance. For what purpose? It makes the plowing harder. I have a gravel parking lot, and I have a landscape business that there's going to be shade around. We're also keeping the shade, like the woodlands. We're not cutting into we're minimizing the earthwork, so there's going to be a forested area on our site. Granted, it's perimeter. It just seems for a small parking lot to comply with the literal definition of your term, which is I think 3-sided asphalt, or I have gravel. To do that, all it does is I stick a parking spot at the end, and I stick a finger in the middle of landscaping, and then makes it worse for my client to maintain. It doesn't make sense from a practical standpoint, and so that's the reason for the request.
Thank you, Jason.
We're not talking about a large Hannaford Plaza here. Yeah, no problem, Tim.
Okay, the last one, Jason, is your Development Regulations, Appendix F, Section 2.4.A, minimum standards for screening of trash storage containers.
Yeah, that's really just because the proposed location of the dumpster is not visible I don't anticipate it to be visible from a public right of way. So it'll be screened by the building. You may have a glimpse of it if you're looking for it and driving by and really looking for it, but we'll do it if you need. It just seems an excessive cost for a local guy looking to do a small business to have spend a little bit extra money screening it where we really don't feel there's any public view of it. And so for that reason, we asked for the waiver.
Okay.
It's just not going to be, the site design and the layout of everything will basically preclude any pervasive views of it from the public, his perspective. You'll see it if you go onto the property to buy the nursery stock and everything like that, if you're parking and driving around with it, but we prefer not to spend the extra money on the screening and basically put it back into the community as small as that means, just pennies, but that's the principle.
Okay, we have board members.
That's it.
Any board members have questions on these waivers? I have Dave Pierce first.
Jason, you show the dumpster location as consuming a parking space. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's going to be, it does,
It's
yes,
in
that's correct.
the southeast parking space. Is that one of your 10 parking spaces?
No, it's, we had an additional, so it should be 11 minus that one. I originally proposed that to be a parking space. And so I think we sacrificed that. Even if we had one extra, so we'd have 9 or 10, we'd comply with the ordinance. But it would be in that southeast corner where it's least visible and barely accessible to the user.
Jason, what kind of
I just feel like it,
Go ahead, finish your
Sorry?
statement. Finish your statement.
it just feels like for the extra expense of putting up the fencing, it's not warranted because I don't feel like it'll be viewed by the public from the public roads. In any real true way.
What's your feeling on accessibility to have a truck get to that dumpster? It looks like if it's in a parking space, it's not easily accessible by the garbage truck.
We could, yeah, it looks, thinking about it now, not looking at it, it is a 90-degree turning movement, but we could change the orientation so it's not, I could review with a dumpster company, or just, they can get into a lot of tight spaces, so I don't really think it's gonna be a problem, but, we could change the orientation of it to make it more, the alignment to be more accessible, no problem.
Well, I was
No
just-
problem at all whatsoever.
I'm just thinking
Or a
straight,
better point.
I'm just thinking straight in towards where you have your snow storage listed, something that's
Yeah.
in line with the
No,
trucks moving.
Tim, I think that's a good idea. Yep.
So if you're agreeable to that, you can bring that back on a revised drawing, maybe?
I agree.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Any other board members have questions regarding the three waiver discussion? Or we can continue it at the next meeting.
I'm
Okay.
gonna suggest you do that, Tim.
Okay, Jim.
When I don't have time to consider this, what Jason said.
And Jason, are you gonna give us a time frame for this, wetlands permit? So that we can have an idea about you getting permits and us talking about approving a plan?
Are you talking about, I'm sorry, Tim, the NHDOT permit?
The, no, the wetlands permits that you said are pending with, DES.
Yeah, so we filed it, submitted it today officially through the clerk. Those take 45 days, 30 days now, I guess, under the rule, but with the COVID stuff, I think that, it could be 45 days. The Conservation Commission I met with yesterday had no planning type concerns. They reserved right to review our application, but I do feel that the wetlands permit could go beyond, the actual processing of that permit could last beyond your next meeting. So I would look for next meeting, if we can clean everything up and get everyone happy, you could condition it on the wetlands approval. And if I had to change my plan subject to wetlands comments, I would have to come back before you. But if you let it all ride and say, we're okay with this, subject to wetlands approval, that would help timing-wise from my client. But I do know that the state, the process the state has takes a certain amount of time. But I did go through the Conservation Commission last night. They had no real issues with the layout or anything. Things I've discussed with you tonight. The only thing that could change, potentially, is the actual culvert crossing itself, which is the actual jurisdiction, which only means right now I'm proposing 24-inch culverts, 2 of them, in each driveway. What would change coming down the pike through the wetlands board if they don't agree with
Jason.
my?
Allow me to interrupt, I'm pretty sure that is incorrect. You told me that it was a 24-inch pipe and then 2 twin 18-inch pipes.
Yeah, it was until when we filed the plan, it was. And then I prepared the wetlands plans and talked to our wetland scientists, and we agreed it just made more sense to upgrade the pipe diameters. And so the wetland permit plans, I've updated the crossings to 24. So what could change is only the hydraulic crossings of the wetlands. So meaning if the state, they may want 2 24-inch pipes, they may want 1 36-inch pipe, they may want a half-buried 48. Like, it's just basically the hydraulics of those crossings is really what's up
So
to.
before the next meeting, we will have a brand new plan and a brand new drainage report to review.
Yeah, it's just one thing. Yeah, I have it, sir. I can give it to you tomorrow. The plan is, and it just happened yesterday when we finished our wetlands application. I think that what I proposed to you is fine with the 18s, but once we decided that it was just appropriate to make them a little bit bigger and no harm, you know how things come when you're dealing with the design process. It's collaborative. You're dealing with Conservation Commission. You're dealing with your own company, environmental engineering. You're dealing with Goffstown DPW. There's a lot of people involved in these things, so things change. So right now, the only difference is that the culvert crossings, we've made them both 24-inch instead of 18. Just to have a little bit of extra flex capacity. And so those are the plans that we filed with the Conservation Commission. And I met with them last night, and I told them that I described the crossings, and I'll meet with them again too once they have a chance to review the wetlands application. But really, when you're talking about the wetlands impacts to this project, this is an existing ditch. It's a flashy ditch, man-made ditch that was most likely built when they developed those houses to keep the water from the mountainside from flooding their houses. So you really only see water in it under flashy conditions. And but it does. There's a lot of flow through there when it does flood. So you need to pay attention to that, you know. And so our design is the hydraulics is all there. You know, I'm a drainage guy. That's what I do. And so that's part of the most of our time planning this project is spent on estimating the amount of runoff that comes through and stuff like that.
Jason,
So-
Jason, I'm gonna assume,
Yeah.
I'm gonna assume that you and Sarah will discuss this at length, and we don't need to complete the discussion
Yes, sir,
tonight.
Jim, sir.
So I'd like to just try to shorten
Yeah.
things up, please.
Yep.
Now, we have two,
Yes, sir.
the planning director has recommended two continuation dates, one to the 14th of May and one to the 28th of May. Which do you think would be appropriate for your,
Tim,
yes?
Tim, wait.
Jim?
The Conservation Commission wants, the Conservation Commission wants to review, they asked for that, and I think it's appropriate to give them a chance, that, in their report, they took a long break.
I agree.
Cut them out occasionally, so I think we should give them time to get it and look at it.
Well, I just had these on my, I had these on my sheet, that's why I was working off them, Jim.
Yeah, I know.
I would say after the
So,
conservation, I agree with Jim all the way.
When is the conservation meeting, does anyone know?
It's around the 20th of the month,
All right, so we,
after the 14th.
Which is 27th of May.
so it's the 27th of May, the night before our meeting. Is 28th acceptable, Jim, or should we push it out another week?
Well, they seem to be, I don't know, maybe Joanne can tell us, they seem to be pretty good about getting us comments quickly, but I don't want to put them on the spot. Joanne, what do you think, or Sarah?
Given that, like, I was under the impression that the plans and drainage report were one way tonight and had no idea until 3 minutes ago that they were completely different, based on changes made yesterday. If there are changes made at the May 27th Concom meeting, we will be discussing old plans again. So I feel like a little time has to be given just in case Concom has comments so that the applicant has time to address them so that we're not talking about plans that are
Well, Jim, can I get you back on the line, Jim?
Yeah, I'm here. I agree with Sarah.
Well, our
I
plans
want
aren't
to get this
completely
through,
different. I'd like to state our plans are not different. The only thing that's different is we've upgraded the culvert by one size. And that Sarah's right, it's different number, but it's not a complete, there's no routing change, there's no changes in any of the watersheds. So to say it's completely different is, I would not agree with that statement.
Well,
But there is a different culvert size, that's all I would say.
Well, I'd like to put in here that the applicant has requested that we do a conditional approval at some point here. So would it be acceptable to the board members to schedule it for the 28th and possibly be able to do a conditional approval based on the DES and Sarah and everyone, Concom, being in agreement? If that's the only outstanding issue.
It's just, we're just dealing now with scheduling. We can schedule a meeting for that, but I think Sarah's point's well taken. If it turns out there's some major issues from the new application, her review, we could continue it. I think we're balancing, want to get this through, but want to give for Conservation Commission a chance to look at it.
And we'll definitely amend that too.
So Jim, what's your recommendation?
I'm gonna move that we schedule this for the second hearing in May, whatever that date is, 29th, I
The
think.
28th.
Okay, it's the day after the Conservation Commission meets, but if it turns out that there are some issues or the Conservation Commission needs more time, I'm gonna be inclined to grant a further continuance.
All right, so is that a motion, Jim?
I'll second that.
It is, yes.
And who was the second by?
Phil?
Bill. Okay. Is there anybody have any discussion on the motion before we call for a vote? Okay, the motion has been made and seconded. David?
Yes.
Kimberly?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Phil?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
And I vote yes. So the motion to move this, continue this meeting to the 28th of May has been moved and voted on. All right, so Jason,
Thank you all very much for your time.
you got a few things to work on, Jason?
Yeah, I already, yep.
Okay then, thank you.
Thank you all for your time.
There was 2 action items on our agenda tonight. One was related to a copy of the letter from Scott Bartlett to the Henry Grady Revocable Trust regarding the requirement to record the new deeds for the recent lot line adjustments for map 9, lots 93, 94, and 94-1. And the second was a copy of a letter from the zoning code enforcement officer to Uptown Auto Repair regarding business use on the barn located at 443 Mast Road. Copies were mailed to the board. Does anybody have any comments on these?
The letter to,
Who's
the letter to the, was dated the 16th and had 5 days response. Have we heard anything yet?
Joanne?
No, the letter actually was mailed today. So, I believe it was slightly modified, but I haven't seen a copy. But it was mailed out today, so, sort of counting down now from today. Giving him time to receive it, and then giving him 5 days.
It's mute to discuss it this evening.
Yeah.
So everybody all set with those 2 action items? David, you have something? Go ahead, Jim.
I'm looking at the Grady letter. I'm a little confused. Did the lot adjustment, the lot line adjustment, was that supposed to be accompanied with a conveyance and change in ownership, or were they just, is it all under common ownership, both lots that are affected by the lot line adjustment?
Joanne will have to address that because I don't have an answer for you.
Yeah, if there's no change in ownership, and they're all under common ownership, then I don't agree with the letter. If the 2 lots have different ownership, then I do. I'm not sure what the situation was.
There was more than one owner between those 3 lots, and the assessor was trying to get them to modify the deed.
Well, are the different owners of the 2 lots? What you said is more than one owner. That's not the issue. Did the 2 lots have different owners?
Both together, and I believe 2 of the lots are different owners.
So I guess there's some figuring to be done, Joanne, so you can answer Jim's question at a later date.
Yeah, I'd like to see what he's talking about. Simply, if the lots are owned by the same people, there's no transfer of title. You don't record a deed. A deed transfers title.
Right.
If it doesn't, just like you grant subdivision approval for the owner, you create a separate lot. You haven't changed titles. There's no deed recorded until they actually sell a lot. So I don't know which this is.
I will follow up the assessor on.
Okay, thank you.
I have one other thing that I just wanted to ask for. We've been running on different schedules at the town hall, and it would be helpful to change the deadline for filing for the application moving forward for the next few meetings. So currently, we ask for 25 days. 21 days would be the deadline. So we count back from the meeting date 21 days. And I just wanted to ask the board if it would be okay to count back 25 days to give Patty some additional time to prepare the abutter notifications and get. It just has to do with the scheduling, the 1 week on, 1 week off, that it's not diving to the planning board schedule right now. So we were wondering if the board would allow us to change the deadline for, not for the May 14th meeting, that deadline is tomorrow, but 2 meetings following May 14th. So it'd be 28th of May, and then the meeting in, I guess, like, 15th.
Is that your deadline in our regulations?
Yes.
Yeah.
There-
In the
In order,
regulations.
it's in our regulations?
And the schedule was published for the whole year. And applicants are working to that published schedule.
E2.
So we got too many people talking at once here. Joanne, what was your answer to Jim's question?
Yes, it is in the development regulations, page 12, section 2E2.
So it's in our regulations, so what are you asking for, to waive our regulations?
Yes, just for the next meeting.
Jim, your answer.
Well, the problem is we're not waiving, we're adding an additional requirement. I don't object to having it. I just don't think you can have sort of a secret change in rules that makes it harder for applicants to know what to do. You know, what are we going to say? You complied with our regs, but we have this secret rule now that...
We wouldn't keep it secret. We would email out to all of the project managers, engineers, et cetera, that we deal with.
Jim?
Well, if you can get away with it, go ahead. It's not the right procedure, but I think, you know, with it, under the state of emergency, you probably get some cover.
Joanne, could it be on a voluntary basis? You would request that of them to help you out rather than make it some sort of a new rule?
Yeah.
You can make it a little more strong, but we haven't had a hearing to change the rules. But we can probably find something in the governor's emergency orders that will give us some authority.
Okay. Thank you.
David, you have something to say? Okay.
No.
Does anybody else have anything else to say before we call for a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Phil to adjourn, seconded by Jim. Have a roll call vote. David?
Yes.
I vote yes. Kimberly?
Yes.
Peter?
Yeah.
Phil?
Yes.
And Jim.
Yes, well done, Tim.
Thank you very much, everyone, for attending tonight and for everyone who listened in. And thank you to Derek for running the switchboard over here. We are adjourned.
Good night.
Night.